The Neverhood Chronicles Preamble? Oh, that looks spooky. I can't read that. It's in 8-bit, and I only speak in 64-bit. What's down here? Father, Cater, the father and the quarter. Wait, you can click on it to read? Nuh-uh. Oh. Oh my god. Oh my god, I misclicked. Oh my god. I thought it was just like them Pokemon letters in Pokemon games where you're not supposed to know what they say. They just kind of say words. Alright, preamble. Oh my god, I didn't read the preamble. We're just reading. I'm stupid. Clinically, actually. Oh my god. I can't wait till I flick my mouse outside of this screen and I accidentally close OBS. I am Katar. Read my words and be my friend. Father commands me to record the truth of history so that readers will learn from those who went before. Therefore, I give each of my 7 sons one of these self-engraving history recording clay walls. Okay. Of the other walls. Behold, anyone who tampers with the records on these walls will be considered the enemy of Father. I will not like you much either. This wall is given by Father. It will teach you to acquire wisdom. In each of our lives, we must make decisions. When these times come, be ready to make the right choices. Continue in what you know is true, though truth is often hard to see. These walls may hold only truths you will know. Cater. Father, know is that he was here before there ever was a here. He is happy and enjoys existing. He is said to be great and powerful, and as far as anyone knows, there was no one before him. He is from the other side. No one has ever been to the other side, but it is supposed to be a great place where there is peace without death. For 7 beings he created for Father to pour his approval on. Cato left the comfort of Father's presence to pioneer a new world where his beings should make their own place in order to be empathized with Catar. Yes. Oh my god. Ogdilla gave Ogdilla a crown, although he did not have a head to set the crown on. Ogdilla is a mass of blue gas that is barely self-aware. It is said that Ogdilla is the spirit of adventure, since on the day he was made, he left Kitter's homeland, traveling in a straight line without stopping. He has picked up many particles from space, which has made a happy home for themselves on Ogdilla's back. Ogdilla is now 1,000,000 times the size he was when Qatar made him, and his inhabitants include the specks of Rilonat. Specks of Rilonate were disguised by all the spitting that the specks of Rod did, and they did not like stepping in it either. The strife between the specks of Rilonet and the specks of Rod carried on for centuries. The conflict was never physically violent, but there was as much whining, taunting, heated, sneering, upheavals, and so on. This period is known as the Ubla Senector Hacht, or forget their animosity, and at the same... Am I missing letters here? Is that... Oh my god, wait. Or even more. Wait. Oh, wait. No, it starts at the bottom. Oh, I get it. Oh, we have to go all the way back. Okay. The 3 millennia of conflict, although it was really more like 2.5, during the Ubla Sector Hacht, an incident happened that once made all the Specks forget their animosity and at the same time exacerbated the conflict even more. In the 8th month, on the 27th day, during the 11th year of the 1st century of the 2nd millennium of the Ubla Sectorhacht, the Specks of Rilonet woke up to find a strange being of gigantic size asleep in Scrunchy Park. There was a pond by his head where he had drooled while he slept. A crowd of Specks gathered around the Titan as the... Oh my god, it's like rewriting a videotape. Morning hours went by. The larger the crowd grew, the more the Specks talked among themselves. The hubbub finally became so loud that the giant awoke and sat up. The giant showed his great teeth and growled at them from deep within his huge body. The Specks fed him for fear of being eaten alive. The giant could easily have thrown 3 or 4 of them into his mouth at once. He was very bizarre looking, even for a giant. He was like nothing they had ever seen before. His head had a ring of flesh on it that started almost at the very top, then looped down and joined the head again at the jaw. 3 Specks, one on top of the other, could have stood up. Could have stood up. Excuse me. inside the ring. He had huge lips with which he covered his enormous teeth, while the Specs had no lips at all. Above the lips, almost to the top of the face, were two ball-shaped things that had one dot on each of them. The giant seemed to use them to observe things, since the dots moved and pointed at whoever was speaking to him. His torso was short for his size, while his legs were extremely long. Out of his chest stuck 3 spiked horns. For days upon end, the Specs tried to speak to the giant to find out if he was friend or foe. To no avail, his form of speech sounded too low, down, deep. It's like rewinding a videotape. And loud, it reminded them too much of the rumbling growl that came from deep within his body. The Specs did not like it, and they did not understand it. They could not even tell where one syllable ended and the next began. The comprehending sentence was totally impossible. To avoid hearing him speak, the Specs fed him constantly. The Specs of Rinlanet did not keep a guard posted where the giant was staying. They could never have overpowered him. In any case, the giant never threatened them. King Rinlanet had in mind to win over the giant's confidence so that he might be employed to stomp the Specs of Rod. King Rinlanet often went to Scrunchy Park to speak to the giant. He wanted to impress the giant, so he had the best acrobats from the Rinlanet circus come visit him. The king commanded the unicyclist to do loop-de-loops inside the ring of the giant's head, while a high diver did trick dives off his huge lips into a barrel of water at the giant's feet. During these demonstrations of the circus performer's expertise, the giant did nothing but stand still and smile. Even while they were trapeze artists swinging from the 3 spikes that stuck out from his chest, the giant stood like a stone sculpture with a silly grin on his face. King Rinlanet redoubled his efforts to continue to try. Oh, having to rewind this is kind of tough. To communicate with the giant. Once he saw that the giant would not harm the circus performers as they climbed and swung upon his body. Day after day, the king came out to where the giant was to try again to communicate his desire for the giant to walk over and stamp on the Specks of Rod. The giant smiled. Oh, thank you for following, Taco Pancakes. Thank you. The giant smiled a lot at the king. We're playing the Neverhood. Hope you're having a good day. How's your day going? How you doing? How you doing? We're playing the Neverhood. It is my first time playing the Neverhood. It's great. It's a point-and-click adventure game made in 1995 by DreamWorks Studios. A game made by DreamWorks. You might know them from the hit game Shrek. And the hit movie Shrek. Thanks for your follow. The giant smiled a lot at the king. He nodded his head when the king nodded his head. He shook his head when the king shook his head. When King Rinlanet slapped his own forehead, the giant slapped his own forehead. When the king mimed walking and pointed in the direction of the kingdom of Rod, the giant stood up and did a dance. I love this game. I'm just so happy to see someone streaming it and speaks English. Aw! I'm loving it so far. There's a lot of story to get through. King Rinlanet, was furious. While the giant was still dancing, the king ordered all the Specks of Rinlanet to throw things at him. Since they were feeding the giant all the time, the only stuff they had at hand was food, so they threw that at him. Well, let me get through this paragraph and I'll drink. The giant tried to eat as much of the food thrown at him as possible, but he could not keep up with the furious pace at which the Specks were throwing it at him. He turned and walked away from them and headed in the direction of the kingdom of Rod. Since the Specks of Rinlanet had thrown so much food at the giant, no matter where he turned, he stepped in it. With each step, more and more... more food gunked up the bottom of his feet. All right, drink time. Thank you. Best game music ever? Absolutely. I really am enjoying it so far. I didn't know how I would feel, but it's very fun so far. It's very quirky. I never read this wall. Props to you. Oh, thank you. I love reading. The Specks of Rinlanet cheered and clapped and jumped up and down. The giant continued in the direction of Rod. The giant turned back to look at the Specks, so they stopped their cheering and got ready to throw more food. But the giant did not come back. He continued on the way he was headed toward the kingdom of Rod. So the Specks of Rinlanet had a great celebration. They hoped that as soon as the giant arrived in the kingdom of Rod, he would smush the Specks of Rod, who were such a bother to the kingdom of Rinlanet. This is so lore heavy. I'm not going to remember any of this. King Rinlanet gave a rousing speech. Well, that's for the great giant. I suppose we owe a debt of thanks to the goofy colossus, for he will shortly be stepping on the Specks of Rod and making such mush of them. His immense foot will crush our ancient foe in an instant. Squashed beneath his mammoth bulk, those unspeakable wretches will be reduced to the vile scum that they have always represented. We are now delivered forever from their constant whining, taunting, and hectoring, and that the feeble-minded Titan is our national hero, a dotish whooper. He will be the greatest of all figures in the history of Ynts. There is none equal to his block-headed enormity on all of Ugdala, but he did come through for us, a stupendously dumb gargantuan as well. Nevertheless, we are rid of him, and I suppose we ought to be thankful that the half-witted behemoth did not stomp on us too. I cannot think of any reason why he would come back here, can you? Meanwhile, the specks of Rod heard the giant before they saw him. His every step made a hollow drum sound on the debris-covered surface of Ugdala. They gathered into frightened groups, becoming more and more agitated as the booming steps grew louder and louder. Getting to the end of this wall without reading it already takes so long? Oh, don't tell me that. Don't tell me that, because I have a need to know how the story ends now. Finally, they saw him. They saw his big ring ahead, his big lips, and the spikes sticking out of his chest, but what most impressed them were his feet. Actually, what most impressed them was what they saw stuck to the bottom of his feet. All that food that he had stepped on looked disgusting, but the specks of Rod did not know that it was food. The specks stood in stunned silence. They knew that the giant had come from the direction of the kingdom of Ynts. Their imaginations took over from there. The specks of Rod were convinced that the giant had stopped on the specks of Ynts and made mush. It's 7 minutes just to walk to the... Oh my god. Well, buckle up, everybody. We're in for a lot of talking. As the giant got closer and closer, word went through the crowd that the giant had finished off the specks of Ynts and was now coming to their kingdom to stomp on them. Some of the specks ran away screaming, but most stood still, knowing they could not outrun the fearsome giant's feats. Then one speck of Rod started clapping. At first, the specks next to him thought it was crazy, but then they started clapping too. Soon a small group was clapping. Then most of the crowd was clapping and cheering and jumping up and down as the giant approached. They had figured that if the giant thought they were glad that the specks of Ynts had been stomped to pudding... This lore is better than Dark Souls. I'm loving it so far. You weren't going to say anything. JV Shannon hit me with, you can click on it to read it. And I thought that meant I was supposed to read all of it. Then he might spare them and consent to be their hero. When the giant reached the front of the crowd, they whooped and hollered for a few minutes. Then the crowd parted and King Rod made his way through to the front. There before his people at the giant's feet, he made a speech. Oh, great giant, thank you, mighty colossal eyelid thing, for stepping on these specks of Ynts and making so mush of them. Your immense foot has crushed our ancient foe in an instant, squashed beneath your mammoth bulk. These unspeakable idiots, hideous idiots. Oh, idiots. Sorry. In parentheses, hideous idiots. Have been reduced to the evil scum that they have always represented. We are now delivered forever from their constant whining, taunting, and bantering. Your magnificent Titan are our national hero. Oh, necronomical whooper, you shall be the greatest of all figures in the history of Rod. There is none equal to your fabulous enormity of all of Ugdala, you tremendous gargantua. You be second only to myself, unless of course you would rather be number one. By the way, we thank you, phenomenal behemoth, so very much for not stomping on us too. I can only offer our humble kingdom to you, amazing monstrous, as compensation for the wonderful deed you have accomplished today. It is not a kingdom worthy of your monumental grandiosity. Of course, you won't like it much. You will probably not like anything we offer you, since it is all tiny compared to your gargantuan size. But of course, anything we have is yours, but I don't know what you would do with it. I say, do you understand me? The giant smiled at the specks of Rod, who smiled back until he spoke to them. The specks, his voice sounded slow and deep and slurred. They looked at each other and shrugged their shoulders. The specks of Rod decided to go back to what they were each doing before the giant arrived. Me when I look at ants? As they left, they kept looking over their shoulders to make sure the giant was not lifting one of his big feet to stomp on them. He did not move from where he stood and maintained a smile until they were out of sight. The next day, the giant was right where the specks of Rod had left him, only he was sitting. So the specks went out about their daily chores, and occasionally they would look over their shoulders on the giant just to make sure he had not stood up. This did not change for several days. Finally, the giant got up and started following some specks around. He seemed to be watching them as they went. You might not be able to read it all this stream and be able to get far, but reading is good. Earned. There is no official record. Oh, from the kingdoms of Rod and Ynts. There is no official record for when the giant was seen last or who saw him, but a few specks from both kingdoms insist that they saw the giant ascending into the heavens early one morning a few years after he ran away from the kingdom of Rod. Did he run away or did he walk away? About the time that the giant ran off, spies from the kingdom of Ynts came to the kingdom of Rod and saw the specks of Rod were not obliterated. They noticed that their enemies were not even bruised a little. This report went back to King Ynts, who was shocked and upset that once again the specks of Rod had foiled his own spec kingdom. He died so stupidly. That's the worst. The story of this game is literally the in-game Bible is essentially what you're reading. Yeah, because anybody that defiles the wall is an enemy of the people. I get that it was supposed to be some kind of self-sacrifice thing, but, like, there was nothing they're going to so much as hurt him. Yes. The sacrificing your life to power up, but then you just kind of die anyways. Lonesome tear. He ordered a delegation to go to the Kingdom of Rod and meet with a delegation of the Specks of Rod. When the delegation of Illuminate arrived at Rod, there was much shock and agitation. You are supposed to be smashed, said the representatives of Illuminate. Well, you are supposed to be squished, said the representatives of Rod. Tensions rose and accusations flew. Each side blamed the other for making their king's most famous speech a pack of lies. The delegations gave messages to each other to take back their respective kings about how... Okay, so we're on, like, page, like, 8 of, like, 37. It's POV or reading a PDF. What's more webbed and complicated? So far, it seems pretty straightforward. Waiting for the Ynts to appear, not gonna lie. The Ynts. There can never be peace between these two kingdoms. As they left the meeting, they all thumbed their noses... Thumbed their noses at each other. The Ublis Senterhacht was back in full swing. King Rolonate grew tired of the thousands of years of bickering between his specs and King Rod's specs. In a desperate move to bring about the day of peace, he asked for a secret meeting with King Rod at the center of Ugdala. In the 34th month on the second day during the 89th year of the 5th century of the 3rd millennium of the Ublis Senterhacht, the kings met. The two kings reasoned for 2 weeks, trying solutions that were fair for both kingdoms, but to no avail. Meanwhile, Ugdala himself had grown so tired of the angst he felt on his back that he spread all of the specks of Rod to one half of his back and the specks of Rilonate to the other half of his back. In a violent quake, Ugdala split it into 2 beings which floated independently from each other. The only problem was that King Rod ended up on the half of the back with the specks of Rilonate, and King Rilonate found himself on the half of Ugdala with the specks of Rod. King Rilonate was at first mistaken by the specks of Rod as King Rod, but he quickly corrected the specks of Rod. Who would win, ZZZ versus or Clayman? See, so far we're not complicated, but things have taken a turn. Let's just recap the story so far. We have 2 kingdoms that are fighting, kingdoms of specs, and a giant appears one day. And the giant, unable to speak and communicate to them because he's too big, is just fed food so that he stops rambling to them and annoying them. He then gets up one day and walks towards the other kingdom, whom is celebrated on his arrival, because it is assumed that he made mush mush out of the initial kingdom, the kingdom of Rilonate. Okay, but then a being comes in, splits them down the middle, and now each king is on each other's territory. So far, so good. Announcing that he was King Rilonate, the specks of Rod immediately cut him into tiny pieces and fed him to their young. Oh god! King Rod, however, told the specks of Rilonate that he was indeed their king, and since few specks of Rilonate have ever seen their own king, they believed him. Eventually, King Rod had the specks of Rilonate build him a large castle with which he housed his children, who were half speck of Rod and half speck of Rilonate. King Rod, posing as King Rilonate, lived to see his specks harmoniously blend. It was previously thought impossible. The specks of Rilonate did not cultivate food on Ogdala's back using their own spit like the specks of Rod. Instead, they rubbed their heads on the fine, hairy, grass-like particles that had attached themselves to cover the Rilonate portion of Ogdala's back. The rubbing caused static charges to build and build until small arcs of lightning flashed off the speck's head. Ogdala's blue gas in the immediate area of the arcs of lightning reacted by turning into bite-sized cubes of lime-flavored finger snacks. As a PhD chemist, that's entirely how that works. That makes sense. This was the sole source of food for the specks of Rilonate. Every 247 days, this was 1 year for the specks of Rilonate, chosen arbitrarily because they did not have seasons. Oh. Well, not make a speech about choosing his own fate and blowing a bomb 10 feet from the people he wanted to save. Oh, random. That's the worst way. I hate that's so sad. I love the PDF reader stream. Great Neverhood experience. The fact they wrote this in clay, like stone tablets, is hilarious. I love this. This is a great. I am so immersed right now in the lore. They chopped up the king and ate him. I was not expecting that left-hand turn. So far, we were all like, "Yeah, this could air on 4Kids," and then real quick we got to, "Oh God, where's the 4Kids edit?" The Specs had their annual feast, which was just called the Falang Perjungi. The great day began with the concert of rubbing, where the entire population of Villanate, young and old alike, rubbed their heads on the hairy particles until they collapsed exhausted, unable to lift a limb. About 3 hours after this frenzy, some Specs regained enough strength to shakingly pull themselves upright. Then the male Specs began the harvest of cubes, while the female Specs prepared gastronomic delights such as cube fondue, cube salad, cube roast, cube soup, cubing, and cube on a stick. For the kids, cube paste, cube filet, cube pie, cube relish, cube stuffing, blackened cube, cube kebabs, cube sherbet, cube kebabs being different from cube on a stick, deep fat fried cube, cube cake, deep fat fried cube cake, barbecued cube, cube chowder, glazed cube, cube panned away, broiled cube, blackened cube, again, cube thermidor, cube on the rocks for the adults, steamed cube, smoked cube, and of course Susan's cube bubble loaf. While the delicious smells of the cube cookery were filling the air, those who were not busy found the time to participate in fun Falang de Jungi games, like come over here, hey you just bumped my friend's elbow, are you just going to stand there? And my classic, this is my bucket. This is my bucket, oh my god, it's Big Boss! Are we gonna have a cooking stream where we cook all the cube food? Put that down. Write that down in the idea book. The day culminated with the Phalange per Junji dance, where they performed lying on their backs with their feet as high in the air as they could possibly get them. First prize going to the dancers with their feet highest up. King Rod, whom the Specs of Villanate thought was King Villanate, used the occasion of Phalange per Junj to campaign for re-election. Since 12 days after the picnic was polling day, the Specs voted every year, but they only had two choices, King Rod, green ballot, or King Rod, purple ballot. Either way, King Rod got re-elected. Granted, I do like the idea that Nishiki thought the only way to keep them safe was his own death to make sure he wouldn't hurt them anymore. Fair. I'm also excited for the next game. I wonder what the next cool characters they'll have. They'll need them. They killed the entire cast by the end of this game. What Yakuza game did you just finish, and how many more do you have left? Or is it like, did you just finish the end of the series? Phalange per Junji was the Specs of Villanate's forgotten Day of Atonement. They knew that in their past there was a definite, yep, Oh my god, thank you, Jamie. Oh, hydrate. Oh, thank you. Now, Yakuza Kiwami, there are like 10 more games. This is the remake of the first game. Oh my god, you started from scratch? Hell yeah. They knew that in their past, there was a definitive day set aside as a Day of Atonement, but it was forgotten before King Rod ever took over the position of King Rilonate. At least they knew there was once a Day of Atonement, but the Specs could not remember what they needed atonement for. After King Rod took the throne, a Spec named Hefamut, during the demolition of a shoe foundry, found a vague historical reference to a Day of Atonement called the Phalange per Junji. The King's advisors advised the King to declare a new Phalange per Junji and to have the marketing department think of some fun things to do on it. No one could think of anything they needed atonement for, so the day is mostly remembered for the annual feast or for the dancing thing. The Specs of this started out as like, here's my lore, and as we're getting more and more deeper into it, right, more read through, it just starts throwing in so much more randomness to the point. I love this. The Specs of Villanate determined when one day was over and a new day had begun by having the day determiner hold the determiner stone out at her side at arm's length. When that day's determiner could no longer hold her arm up, the day was declared done and the next day determiner took up the stone. Being day determiner was a prestigious honor, but no she-spec was allowed to do it more than once a year. Rilonate specs married in threes, 2 grooms and a bride, or 2 brides and a groom. Either case, the spouse with the 2 counter-spouses had to alternate every day, being spouse to one and then the next day to the other. Each spec year, the sequence is renewed, starting with the spouse who was shorted by 1 day the previous year. The marriage ceremony of Rilonate was short and simple. The 3 specs went before the king of the assigned day of their marriage appointment. Each stated their vows, which consisted only of a promise to abide by the custom of spouse alternating and a promise to never get ugly. The vows are repeated in this way. The king said to each spec intern, how many days are in a spec year? 274, chosen arbitrarily. Do you, blank, promise to never get uglies? To which each responded in turn, I do. Then, in the case of one groom and two brides, for example, the king said to the groom spec, repeat after me, I, blank, take you, blank, to be one of my wedded wives, and you, blank, to be the other of my wedded wives. Annulment usually stemmed from one of the two brides or one of the two grooms, in the case of one bride and two grooms, feeling slighted because she was not the first one named in the vow. Divorce usually stemmed from one spouse being cheated out of his or her fair share of marriage days on leap year, when an extra day went to the spouse, who then renewed the New Year sequence. 247 days. I'm sorry. I got them mixed up. I got the 7 and the 4 mixed up. What's this? Can I see this? Or is that the spec? That's the spec. Okay, keep walking. Oh my goodness. Bert? Kater made his next being a form closer to his own. He attempted to duplicate himself, but because he was not as good as a man-builder as father, the being was not quite a perfect duplicate. Bert was given powers of speech and reason, but he could not grasp that he was different from Kater. He thought he was Kater and innocently... Oh! Thank you for following, Yanny boy. You're doing great. You got this. Thank you. It's just a PDF reader. We're doing great. We're on the second being. I think we're doing great. Thank you for the follow. He thought he was Kater and he instantly... How you doing today? I keep forgetting. I want to read, but I'm like, someone just joined in. I should say hi to them. Thank you for joining. Thank you for following. He thought he was Kater and he instantly made 7 of his own crowns and started making his own people in his own image. Because Bert was an even worse being maker than Kater, each generation looked worse and worse. By the last generation, Bert's being were not even alive. They just like blobs of meat. Oh no. The lineage of Bert, empowered by Kater to create, Bert, believing that he himself was Kater, beget another Bert. The second Bert beget Breadbad, a weak attempt at Bert, but with speech impediment. Breadbad was a wise being, the most wise of all, it has been said, although no one knows exactly who said that, but it stuck. He did not write down any of his wisdom, but his son, Bredabrack, the literal transcribed Breadbad's lectures. Anyone wanting to tackle reading this well deserves a follow. I've only done it once in my life, never again. Well, I started reading, and we got halfway through the first wall, and someone was like, oh, this wall's going to take a minute if you're reading it. And then someone else went, I wasn't going to tell him. But that someone was the person that told me I could read the wall. And if you tell me I can read the wall, I'm going to read the wall. I like the first story. The second story's off to a great start. I love the day holder. The wisdom of Breadbad, the son of Bert, the son of Bert. I am not good by nature, nor am I naturally happy, but if I fall, it is a fault of my own, not my mom or pappy. Hey guys, first time I see people actually going through the lore wall. Hello! I have been the witness of 1,000 follow. For this, I am not fortunate. For me, it is torture mate. Torture Nate? I ponder these till I am withered and sullen. Power is pleasant if served under glass, or eaten like pheasant, causing my voice to rasp. Oh, we got some sick beats now. Welcome in, Arslan Ruslan. Hello. Happy day. The killer be killed, the dancing man stilled. When bees of plenty sting, my heart many. I emaciate, thinner. Found are the 3 ways of Babylon. I fear... Oh, one? No, I. Yeah? Fear it eats people itself like a snake down a hill and finds nourishment there. The bigger it gets, the more it eats, until it is everywhere. 2. Greed. Unlike fear, it shrinks until the snake is something small and despicable, smelling like a torch when mixed with hair. 3. Vanity. Is the snake thinking? He has strong legs that can jump the stream. He floats belly up when caught in the snare. I will share with you my comings and goings if you will listen. You will join me on these journeys if you hasten. We will perish if you do not. Breadbad, having no point of reference but himself, beget Bredabrick, the literal. Once a large crowd of descendants of Bert had formed, poor Bickback was made to sit in the back. He tried to hide his sadness by pretending to enjoy the back of the crowd. It was there that he met the rest of the back of the crowd. They were pitiful beings suffering from physical maladies, almost as bad as his splotches. A distant cousin named Highface offered to stand behind Bickback so that it would seem like he was not in the absolute back of the crowd, but Bickback chose to emulate the cruelty of the rest of the group by pointing out Highface's abnormality, a tiny second head growing from his palm. He sang a song about a thing with a thing hiding in its palm. Everyone laughed at Highface for a while and praised Bickback for his entertaining and funny verse. Highface confronted Bickback regarding the display of cruelty, but Bickback sang the song again until Highface ran home crying. The crowd acknowledged that Bickback was witty, but they still could not let him go to the front of the crowd because of those awful splotches. This gave Bickback an idea. One morning, Bickback went to the great lengths to hide. Oh, I clicked out of it. Hold up. Whoops. Oh, it's just more text. His splotches, using some dust. He coated himself until finally his peers found him beautiful. They quickly escorted him to the front of the crowd, where he was commanded to write more songs about beings in the back of the crowd. Bickback wrote songs of cruelty and prejudice about them all. All that is, except for one in the back row. He hoped that the front of the crowd would not notice that he was intentionally overlooking his brother, Little, who was... Can I say that on Twitch? And therefore the most back of the whole back row. But alas, someone noticed. Now, Bickback, let us have a song about Little, the crowd screamed. Oh no. Oh no. They figured that Bickback was saving a song about Little until the end, since it would be the funniest and easiest to write, given the subject matter. Bickback looked across the crowd at Little, who could only stare at the ground. Little was pitiful in his brother's sight, and Bickback hated him for not being perfect. Bickback walked over to his brother, who was drooling and looking very stupid. Little recognized his brother and decided to hug him hard the way he always had. Little reached out and hugged Bickback back, saying, "Low lock Bix." The crowd roared with laughter at Little. They found his audacity to touch someone from the front row typical of his level of stupidity. Embarrassed, Bickback threw Little to the ground and called him an animal. Little was shocked and began to cry. Bickback looked down at the drool-covered arms, and the drool had wiped away some of his dust covering, exposing the horrible, hated splotches. Bickback openly wept face down on the ground. Little crawled over to him and held him. The crowd was uncomfortable. No one knew what to do. Just then, Bickback wiped his eyes and announced, "I have a song about the pitiful members of the back of the crowd." Those in the back of the crowd figured that this would be the most degrading song yet. The front of the crowd cheered. Little drooled. Bickback sang in a voice, so beautiful that to this day no song has ever been written to compare. This is what it sang. "In this life I have found one thing, it is pity incarnate of which I sing. You have been told about the back of the crowd, and I repeat it plenty loud. That they are animals to be excused, as helpless freaks which we shall use as ladder rungs for our speedy ascent to the front of the crowd, where we'll invent a strict system of attractive and not. On which side of the net will you be caught? Align me please with the crowd's back, the front can for what I care go to hack. With their own standards based on their small group. If given the choice between accepting many or few, I will love the different and accept the whole crowd. I will sing of my world, long and loud, and my word I shall. I say that we the low be tall, and so brother Little is greatest of all." The entire crowd fell silent as Bickback walked over to his brother and held him. He whispered in Little's ear, "I'm so sorry I have been a big fool." Little still just drooled. Some members of the crowd heeded Bickback's song and embraced the entire crowd. Did we solve racism? That's what it feels like. Others did not, and made it their full-time concern to reestablish the lines between the front and the back of the crowd. Bickback lived a happy life. He wed Phyllis, a demure, little lady, also from the back of the crowd. He beget Mac-Mock, which means low is high. Mac-Mock beget Mac-Mac, who beget Mac-Mac, who beget Mac-Mac, who beget Mac-Mac, who fashioned a two-sided being which included both genders, male and female, one on either side. It was a colossal being named... If it says Mac-Mac... Mamor, who was very proud indeed. It considered itself absolutely complete, lacking nothing, and independent even from its creator, Mac-Mac. Mac-Mac could not stand for such conceit, so he made a huge crowbar with which he pried the being into two parts, a male being named Mean and a female being named Mavi. It took all of Mokmok's strength to pry the two halves apart, and when Mamor finally split, it sent the crowbar hurtling out into space. As soon as the two half beings saw that they were no longer a singular whole, they started trying to put themselves back together. This is the remake that we need. Neverhood Disney? For real? Again, they have been trying to put themselves back together ever since. Mamor, or Min Mavi, then beget Mamut. Wait, Maumat. Maumat. And the sons of Maumat were Mau, Much, and Marzim, and Ma, Tup, and Manak. And the sons of Mau Muk were Mables and Maliva. Maliva? Saliva. Maliva. We'll say Maliva. And Magbos, and Mamar, and Makda... Okay, the family tree's too big now. It's a bush. And the sons of Mamar were Mibesh and Madid. Now Madid became the father of Murimin, who became a mighty florist in his town, and was a mighty florist before Keter. Therefore it is said, like Murimin, a mighty florist before Ketar. And the beginning of his kingdom consisted of Daisy World and the Rosebud and Tulif Crime in the land of Rainish. From what the land went through Melaptis and built Havani and Tisthut and Renisinin. Between Havuni and Titi, that is the great city. And Mormin became... This feels like it was absolutely based on a religion. This is so intricate now. It was... Remember, it started out as funny big giant man go squish other kingdom, but he didn't. And now they have a weird celebration where they rub their heads on the ground and cause electricity to create cubes. And now it's 37 lines of people with the first letter of their name being M. And Mormin became the father of Midul and Miana and Mibalhil and Mihuptan and Misothrop and Mihulsak, from which came the Peons and the Myrothapt and Mixedmath, the evil twins. And Misothrop became the father of Modius, the firstborn, and Mathbath became the Quergentes, and the Lolo men, and the Philodendrites, and the Shrub people, and the Clay Wanters, and the Neo-Renaissanceites, and the Briv, and the Mankinite, and afterward the families of the Mankinite were spread abroad, and the territory of the Monachite extended from Nudis as you go towards Modoc, Delano, and Truckee, and Chester, and Alterus, as far as Lake Alamar. So these were the sons of Mamat, according to their families, according to their language, by their lands, by their nations. Modus then begat Mamin, who decided to wear a purple hood instead of a crown. Mamin begat Mani, who liked the hoods a lot, but hated his father's purple hood, not hoodie, hood, it's a semicolon. So in rebellion... What do you mean father was the first? This is blasphemy. The clay tablets tell the truth. Armacog, spiritual successor follow-up, also has a long haul of records with some crazy lore also. I can tell when we're getting to the end because it starts getting significantly more loosey-goosey. He went back to the crown-wearing tradition of the previous generations. The gesture also pleased Keter so much that Mani was simply caught up into the presence of Keter to live forever in peace with father, but not before he was able to create a poor likeness of himself, Mani, who beget Waini, who beget Fuaji, the founder of the famous Fa'a nation, who beget Fepat, who begets Fepi, who begets Fe, who liked to sing loving songs for his sons. He sang by expelling air from between the 5 flaps of flesh on his back. These Lovecraftian horrors are singing. Fe sang this way in a sincere gesture of love for his many sons, but the perpetual honking and flapping of his songs echoed up to the ears of Ketar, who after many years of tolerance could finally take it no more. Ketar smote Fe with a bolt of energy so intense that nobody ever found a trace of his body. Fe was destroyed in the prime of his life, but not before he was able to create 13 sons. Fe's 13 sons were Cloth, Clough, Clow, Klimt, Cleft, Clock, Clink, and 5 sons, all of whom Fe named Kloppen Mowowince, because he could not think of another name until the birth of his last son, Klee. And the Fwa legends are the stories of Fe and his 13 sons. Fe's favorite son was named Klee, meaning give me one more like this one. Fe often had his son... Give me more like this one. Fe often had his sons watch the Fwacattle herd in an attempt to teach them the value of hard work and the responsibility of caring for the herd. Fwacattle had 3 genders, female, he-male, and 3-male. 3 males are the gender characteristics of all 3 genders. When the females were nursing, they excluded Fwagurkins from their hide. Fwagurkins were the staple of the Fwa'a diet. Klee was the... Oh, we have a hydrate. Oh, the end. Yeah, it's a separate IP because Unks couldn't get their OG license back. Oh, I see. No, I'm not being under EA. That's sad. Oh, that's sad. If I ever become rich, I would spend it all to have to own the game. The Neverhood gender lore is as complicated as the modern day. I don't know. Male, he-male, and 3-male are pretty good. Youngest of Fez's sons, yet he was also the most responsible, and he was the only one who listened when Fez spoke to his sons and the legends of Fep-Pe had told him of Father and Kater. The other sons spent most of their time listening to their father's songs, but avoiding work, dreaming of ways to spend their inheritance as soon as their father died. On the other hand, Klee, which means give me more of this one, spent the time tending the family herd of Fwacattle, with such care that many thought it was his own herd. It was the largest herd of Fwacattle in the nation of Fwa, next to the Emperor's own herds, and the Fes certainly appreciated Klee's care. To show his appreciation, he slaughtered his finest Fwa calf and had the hide made into a fine pair of shorts for Klee. Fez's other sons considered Klee an obstacle to their fun, so they started spending a portion of their time planning ways to get rid of him. When Klee was out herding the Fwacattle with his brothers, he would often bring back a bad report to his father of how the other sons abused the herd, and often secretly sold Fwagurkins of their own profit. Klee boldly told his brothers that while they were dreaming up ways to avoid work, he was dreaming of being emperor of Fwa'a. This got on their nerves. And after... I mean, it's basically Neverhood, but it's not. Like, copy my homework, just don't be obvious about it. Okay. That, I love that explanation. It solves so many problems. It solves so many questions off the rip. Just don't make it look don't make it look the same. I need to take a breath here. Hold on. Forgot how to breathe. Much plotting they did, finally came up with a plan to get rid of Klee. When he came out to the plans of chopping to check upon them, they grabbed him and sewed him and his fine shorts to the back of a full bull. The brothers then traded Klee and the full bull to some chopping hops. For some stewed pods, they took these back to Fe and explained that Klee had been trampled in a stampede, and that the pods were all that was left of their brother. Fe mourned for 88 years, the death of his favorite son Klee. Meanwhile, the Cop and Pops, never noticing Klee sewn to the back of their own Fabul, traded it to the Emperor's herdsman for a pack of Gaza smokes. Now, an emperor likes a clean herd of Fwacattle, so his herdsmen scrubbed the Fwacattle daily. While they were scrubbing the new Fwabul that Klee was sewn onto, they noticed him crying out and begging to be released. The herdsman released Klee to the custody of Portanchippa, the emperor's bodyguard. Portanchippa made Klee his butler, and Klee took on the responsibility, much as he did with his father's herd of Fwacattle. Portanchippa was not home much, but with all the responsibilities of his own job, but when he was home... He did not fail to notice Klee's meticulous care of the house and household matters. He actually did a better job than Portanchippa would have done himself. Portanchippa would have been jealous, but he enjoyed the spare time too much. In these days, each time Portanchippa had been out on one of his many trips away from home with the Emperor, his wife, Portanpippa, started making eyes at Klee the way she would only be making eyes at Portanchippa. Klee was no fool. He knew what Portanpippa was up to, so he warned her with the warning his mother always used. He said, "If you don't stop making eyes like that, they're gonna get stuck that way." Portanpippa could not stand to be rejected, so she kept making eyes at Klee, and sure enough, her eyes got stuck. She lied to Portanchippa when he came home that night and told him Klee had dressed up like Portanchippa to just get her to make eyes at him. Portanchippa beat Klee to within a foot span of his life and threw him into jail, but Katar did not forget Klee. Klee once again prospered because of his faithful conduct. After the jailer beat Klee to within a half-foot span of his life, he put Klee in charge of all the prisoners. who were in the jail, so that whatever was done there, he was responsible for it. The jailer did not supervise anything under Klee's charge, because whatever Klee did always prospered. Klee often told the other prisoners the stories of Father and Katar that he had heard as a boy. Then it came about after these things that the Emperor's nephew offended the Emperor by besting him at liver juggling. The Emperor was furious with his nephew, so he took away the status of Emperor's nephew, gave it to some new guy who happened to be walking by, and put his nephew in confinement in the jail, and the same place where Klee was imprisoned. Okay, the lore for Klee goes hard. And the jailer put Klee in charge of the Emperor's former nephew, and he took care of him, and he was in confinement for some time. Then the Emperor's ex-nephew, who was confined in the jail, had a terrible time sleeping one night. He tossed and turned all night long. When Klee came into him in the morning and observed him, behold, he was downhearted. And he asked the former Emperor's nephew, who was with him in confinement in jail, "Why is your face so sad today?" Then the former nephew said to him, "Are you blind? Just look at my hair. I've got bedhead, and there is no one to interrupt it." No, interpret it. It's like reading tea leaves. It's reading bedhead. He said this because in the kingdom of Fep, bedhead interpretations are used to foretell the future. Oh my god, it is. Called it. Then Klee said to him, Klee. Do not interpretations belong to Katar? Let me study your bedhead, please. Then Klee said to him, "This is the interpretation of your bedhead. This afternoon the Emperor will restore you to the position of Emperor's nephew and have you released from jail. Now please, do me a kindness by mentioning me to the Emperor. Get me out of this jail, for I was in fact kidnapped from the land of Foa, and even here I have done nothing that they should have put me into jail." That afternoon the Emperor declared that his nephew, who was in jail, should be released and be restored to the position of Emperor's nephew. When the Emperor was asked what he should be done with the guy to whom he, the Emperor, had given the nephew status, the Emperor said to throw him in jail instead. The Emperor's nephew did not remember Klee. In fact, he forgot him. But Katar did not forget Klee. Now it happened at the end of 2 full years that the Emperor woke up one morning with bedhead, and his spirit was troubled. So he sent and called for all the interpreters, and the Emperor had them study his bedhead. But there was no one who could interpret it to the Emperor. Then the Emperor's nephew spoke up, saying, "I would make mention today of my own offenses. The Emperor was furious with me, and he put me in confinement in the jail. And I woke up one morning with bedhead. Now a Foa youth was with me there, a servant of the jailer. He studied my bedhead, and he did interpret it for me. And it came about that just as be interpreted for me, so it happened. I was restored to my status as Emperor's nephew." Then the Emperor sent and called for Klee, and they hurriedly brought him out of the jail. And when he had shaved himself from head to toe, that is how one is presented to the Emperor. Once I owned the Neverhood, I went to make the Neverhoodsian shirts. How many megabytes of data do you think this is taking up? Oh, at least a dozen, right? Only 5 more stories to go? Oh, no. He came to the Emperor, and the Emperor said to Klee, "I presume that you can see I have bedhead, and no one here can interpret it, but I have heard it said about you. But when can you study bedhead? You can interpret it." Klee then answered the Emperor, saying, It is not in me interpretations of bedhead belong to Katar." The Emperor said to Klee, "Behold, study my bedhead." Now Klee said to the Emperor, "A terrible drought is coming. It is going to cause skyrocketing inflation and a shortage of foie gherkins and frep gherkins. Throw the land into a panic, raise prices and drop interest rates, but not before there is a huge surplus of fep gherkins. Now let the Emperor look for a man discerning and wise, and set him over the land of Fep. Let the Emperor take action to appoint overseers in charge of the land, and let him exact 1/5 of the Fep gherkins of the land of Fep in the time of surplus. Then let them gather all the Fep gherkins of this surplus, and store them up, and let them guard it. Let the surplus become as a reserve for the land during the drought which will occur in the lands of Foix.
Taco_pancakes gifted a tier 1 sub to
Thank you for gifting a sub, Taco Pancakes.
This is their first gift sub in the channel.
Thank you. Oh, thank you for gifting that sub. Oh, thank you. Yeti Boy Show sub. Oh, thank you guys. This is awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much. I hope you're having a good time. I know it's a lot of reading, and I'm kind of getting antsy, and I'm like, maybe we should move on, but also, I'm invested now. I think it's just a reading stream. Occur in the lands of Foix, and Fep, so that the land may not perish during skyrocketing inflation. The Emperor said, "Wow, all that was in my bedhead?" Then he said to his servants, "Can you believe a man like this guy, Klee?" So the emperor said to Klee, "Since you've got all the answers, you shall be over my house, and according to your command, all my people shall go do homage. Only in the throne I will be greater than you. See, I have set you over all the land of Fep." And the emperor took off his shorts. That's a wild place to end. Undershorts. He was wearing undershorts on underneath. For crying out loud. And put them on, Klee. And he had him ride on his second vehicle, and the servants proclaimed before him, "Bow the knee!" And he set him over all the land of Fep. Moreover, the emperor said to Klee, "Though I am aware I am the emperor, yet without your permission no one shall raise his hand or foot or left eyebrow in all the land of Fep." And he gave him Gale, the daughter of a guy he beat in a game of wagon hurling the previous day. Thus Klee became prime minister of the neighboring kingdom of Fep. Klee's lore actually is probably my favorite so far. The last story, not nearly as cool as this story. Oh my god, I can't believe. We'll let that through. It's relevant. After the period of surplus in Fep, Fez land dried up, and the foie herders wandered away, and the shortage of foie gherkins threw the land of foie into panic, raising prices and dropping interest rates. The Fep boys, Claw, Cluff, Clow, Klimt, Cleft, Clock, Clink, and 5 sons, all of whom Fe named Kloppenhauerwitz, because Fe could not think of another name until the birth of his last son Klee, were forced to trek out to Fep and trade their prized Choppenmetal status for the Fep gherkins, dreading the odious Fepa aftertaste. The Foie hate Fep gherkins. To them they are dirty. The Foie are so conditioned to despise Fep gherkins that just thinking of the Fep aftertaste causes a physical reaction. Simply seeing a Fep gherkin has also been known to cause a Foie to go pale and become woozy. The odor of Fep gherkins sets off the gag reflex. It is common to hear a Foie gentleman say, "I'd rather eat the refuse of my worst enemy than eat Fep gherkins." To which another might respond, "Oh yeah, I'd rather poke myself in the eyes with a 6-inch rusty spikes than eat a lousy Fep gherkin." Feb jerkins? Yeah, reading's hard. To which another might reply, "Well, I'd rather eat my own head innards after they'd been sucked out through my eye sockets by a great naturally occurring vacuum than eat Feb jerkins." Still, another might say, "I'd rather have a full-body massage from a servant girl named Hella than eat Feb jerkins." To which everyone would respond, "Huh?" If a foie wants to insult another foie, your popular saying is, "Your mother eats Fep jerkins." It is considered very naughty behavior for foie youngsters to even talk about Fep jerkins. The controversial foie comedian Ludi Kincaid once performed an entire live routine of nothing but Fep jerkin jokes. Of course, it was an adults-only performance and was banned in most towns. All the people of Foie, including Fe and his sons, realized they would have to choke down the Fep jerkins, and most likely vomited a few times after eating the first 3 or 4, or face certain starvation. Now Klee, the ruler over all the land, he was the one who sold to all the people of the land, and Klee's brothers came and bowed down to him to their faces to the ground. When Klee saw his brothers, I'm wondering at what point they're going to mention the plumbus. He recognized them, but he disguised himself to them and spoke to them with cotton in his cheeks. His brothers ordered 12.5 cases of Fep jerkins. The Klee gave orders to fill the cases with shorts of great value, and thus it was done for them. So the brothers loaded their oxen with the 12.5 cases and departed from there. At the border, Klee had his police stop his brothers. The head policeman said, "May I see your receipt, please?" Claw, the eldest, handed over the receipt to the officer. "Says here you brought 12.5 cases of Fep jerkins. Mind if we take a look inside these here cases?" Chloe agreed to let the police search the cases. When they were opened, the police of course found the priceless shorts. The brothers were stunned, to say the least. Their hearts sank. They turned trembling to one another, saying, "What's up with that?" So the police escorted the sons of Fe back to Klee's house. The brothers thought they were done for, but when Klee saw them, he invited them in and fed them delicious snacks, prepared with Fep jerkins, of course. While they were eating, it sounds German. The Fep Jerkins, Klee, Clonk, Clink. After having thrown up at least twice each, Klee had their cases of Fep Jerkins filled with the finest Fep shoelaces, such as only the Emperor's family would wear. After dinner, Klee released his brothers, who still did not recognize him, to go on their way home. At the border, Klee had his police stop his brothers. The head policeman said, "May I see your receipt, please?" Claw, the eldest, handed over the receipt to the officer. "Says here you brought 12.5 cases of Fep Jerkins. Mind if we take a look inside of these here cases?" Claw agreed to let the police searched the cases. When these were opened, the police, of course, found the precious shoelaces. The brothers were stunned, to say the least. Their hearts sank and they turned trembling to one another, saying, "What is up with that?" So the police escorted the sons of Fe back to Klee's house. The brothers thought they were done for, but when Klee saw them, he invited them in and had them join him in the pool. While they were in the sauna after swimming, he had their cases of Fep Jerkins filled with priceless gauges. After they had all dried off, Klee released his brothers, who still did not recognize him, to go on their way home. At the border, Klee had his police stop his brothers. The head policeman said, "May I see your receipt, please?" Claw, the eldest, handed over the receipt to the officer. "Says here you bought 12.5 cases of Fep Jerkins. Mind if we take a look inside of these here cases?" Claw agreed to let the police search the cases. When they were opened, the police, of course, found the precious gauges. The brothers were stunned, to say the least. Their hearts sank, and they turned trembling to one another to say, "What's up with that?" So the police escorted the sons of Fe back to Klee's house. The brothers thought they were done for, but when Klee saw them, he had them come in and watch a play performed in mime in his private home theater. Then he had them spend the night. While they were sleeping, he had the cases of Fep Jerkins filled with human aliterfatch, which is a lot like food. In the morning, after breakfast, Klee released his brothers, who still did not recognize him, to go on their way. But Claw, the smartest brother, said, "Before we go, I'd like to look in these cases of Fep Jerkins." When he opened one up, of course he found the human aliterfatch. He exclaimed, "What is up with that?" Klee knew he had to let his brothers in on his little deception. Klee said, "I'm Klee!" And the brothers responded, "Who?" Then Klee took the cotton balls out of his cheeks and told them the whole story. He said, "It goes like this. When I came out to the plains of Choppin to check up on you, you grabbed me and sewed me and my fine shorts to the back of a foie boule. Then you traded me to the foie boule and to some choppin' hops for some stewed pods." Klee's brothers went back to Fo'a and returned to Fep with their father, Fe, who lived there for only a few years until Qatar eventually smote him with a bolt of energy. In all, the Fe family lived in Fep for 410 years. Klee, having become ruler of all the land of Fep, was compelled by his people to change his name to Fe Ni, which means most of which still do not agree. Fe Ni begets Fe Ni, who begets Wani, who beget Aker, who looked nothing like his father Wani, but nonetheless managed to create Ep. Like many generations before him, Aker sang to Ep every night over his crib, using the flaps in his back and the traditions of Fe. Aker showed all of the love a good parent should show his offspring. He often stared into Ep's face for hours until his eyes grew dry and tired. Ep was full of kindness and generosity, taught by Aker and likely nurtured by his grandfather, Wani. One day, while Ep and his grandfather were on a long... Lore is great. You can tell they did not have artist block at all. I would like to point out that there are not 5 flaps on this fellow's back here. Trip to the boneyard. Wani grew ill. Wani asked Ep to stay with him until he returned home to father, for he was afraid Ep daubed Wani's brow with a cool cloth. Dabbed, but daubed? That make he patted his head with it. I did it in real life. You can't see that. I patted my forehead, but you got it. Kater opened the sky and let Wani enter. This was the first time Ep had seen Kater, who was far more marvelous than the legends told. Ep grew to be strong and handsome, being much closer in likeness to Bert than any generation before him. Ep became a mighty leader to the other beings who saw that he was in favor with Kater. Just as everybody thought that the whole each generation gets worse thing had finally turned around, Ep's own creation came out looking like a pile of something badly burned, so he named it was not alive, so it could not beget anything. And that's him. That's Klee. I'm guessing. That's the guy. That's the man, the myth, the Klee. When the Norologists show good, you're correcting the creator by the flap amount. Okay. Should we keep reading, or should we jump to the end? Because I'm fine with reading for the rest, but it is a lot of reading. So let me take a quick let's do a poll. Jamie Shannon, can you do a poll for me? So now we're gonna start speed reading. We're gonna try to speed read this one. So buckle up. Cater decided to make a being of greater substance than any of his previous creations. Numeron looks like a pile of cubes. He was obsessed with being sensible and correct in everything, following the rules to the letter. Numeron rarely did anything on his own without asking Cater for his explicit directions. Numeron loved his crown and wore it with much pride, perhaps a little too much pride. He made 300 duplicates of himself whom he would boss around, all day, every day. These are some of their genealogies. The firstborn of Numeron was Nebris, a clone of Numeron. The firstborn of Nebris was Thopobene, the similar, and then, okay, hold up, then Libda, Maspim, Mishmash, Hamda, Bim, Dad, Emmet, Juter, Bigafish, Shiphan, and Hamdek. These were the sons of Nebris, and the sons of Thopobene were Narmes, Jock, Gawk, Wim, Nibe, Itchy Itch, one word, Kashi, and Chip-Chape. And the sons of Nibe were Abesh and Naded, and the sons of Itchy Itch were Haf and Ref. Mashinrog, Adiba, Inkarog, and Ha. All these were the sons of Thopobene the Similar, and Numeron was the father of Numeron Jr. The sons of Numeron Jr. were Lee Nimba and Supanupa. The sons of Lee Mimba were Zephiel, Loiter, Shohorf, Malagasket, and Harak. The sons of Zephiel were Nemet, Ramo, Ifez, Maytag, Zanik, Anmit, and Kelma. The sons of Loiter were Thaham, Hairpin Barpin, Ham Mash, and Shasa. And the sons of Hairpin Barpin were Pies, Bud, Labunski, Noebez, Hannah, Nosh, Begosh, Rees, and Nashid. And the sons of Bud were Ero and Mambashi. Natel's sisters was Annie, Nit. The sons of Noshgosh were Alan, Nunibiz, The, Labi, If, and Mono. And the sons of Nunibiz were Hoksokina Gik and Sot, and the nephew of The. The son of Sot was Knock Knock, and the sons of Knock Knock were Narm, Nob, Narthi, and Nar, and Rees. The sons of Rees were Nalbo and Nazanatab. Nazana? The sons of Nablo were Zu and Narakatang Baluf. Yes. Now these are the kings who reigned in the land of Heka before any king of the sons of Numeron Jr. reigned. Eleb was the son of Ryandale, and the name of his city was Havtu. When Eleb died, Baburno, the son of Hiwai of Harzab, became king in his place. Reading is so hard. Half of my brain is trying to be like, it's like Japanese, 2 or 3 letters, and the other half is, I don't know, it sounds like words. When Baburno died, Mashush of the land of the Namites became king in his place. When Mush died, Dada, the son of Dadib, who defeated Nidian in the field of Baum, became king in his place, and the name of the city was Thiem. When Dada died, Pe-Halo of Hackersaam became king in his place. When Pe-Halo died, Owio of Thought by the river became king in his place. When Owi died, Nanabal, the son of Robcha by the sea, became king in his place. When Nanbal died, Dada became king in his place, and the name of his city was Iap, and his wife's name was Dimethicone, the daughter of Padamate and the daughter of Obenzone. Then Dada died. Now the chiefs of Heka were Chief Anmiti, Chief Amoilent, Chief Thief, Chief Hambiloho, Chief Hale, Chief Nanip, Chief Zenek, Chief Namet, Chief Razama, Chief Le Nez, and Chief Mary. These were the chiefs of Heka. Now, Numeron paid little attention to the beings he had already made, rather he focused intently on new beings to create and neglect. Numeron made Nebris's brother Abris, who was a pure-hearted, obedient follower, in spite of the fact that Numeron ignored him. Nebris became convinced that no one could be as good as Abris made himself appear, and he feared that a whole YouTube playlist of a guy reading it is around 137 minutes. Well, I know what I'm putting up on the YouTube channel after today's stream. Abris would eventually displease Kater, so Nebris, believing that Numeron was paying no attention, destroyed Abris by breaking off all of the many antlers that covered Abris's back and neck. This heinous act did, in fact, escape Numeron's notice, but Kater himself was watching, and he smote Nebris with permanent blindness. Now, the sons of Narcolon, the son of Numeron, were Limher, Mah, and Iabol. Iabolch. And Ma became the father of Badanamina. And Badanima became the father of Nosham, leader of the sons of Narcoloni. Nosham became the father of Amlas. Amlas became the father of Zoab. Zoab became the father of Debo. And Debo became the father of Issei. And Issei became the father of Bailey. And the firstborn of Badaniba, the second Amish, the third Lenathine, the fourth Iader, the fifth Mezzo, the sixth Hank, the seventh and their sisters were Horez, and Liagiba. Their three sons of Horez were Ashba, Box, and Lehasha, and Liagba bore Muddy Bing Pudi, and the father of Muddy Bing Pudi was Jethro the Nabrisite. And Muddy Bing Pudi became the father of Banana Grunt, and Banana Grunt became the father of No Such Luck, the leader of the sons of No Dice. No Such Luck became the father of Amwhat became the father of Goathlam? Yeah, became the father of Denarupture, and Denarupture became the father of Cupt, became the father of Vicue, his firstborn, then Waikun, the second, Tanana, the third. I'm starting to pick up the names as we're halfway in. Biswick, the fourth, Ayata, the fifth, Nintendo, the sixth. Oh my god, my boy Nintendo. Which adds an extra 2 hours into the game's 2 hour and 30 minutes games play. Oh my god, this game's only 2.5 hours long. That's so funny. Nagoink the seventh and their sisters were Beach Noodle and Gromlet, and the three sons of Beach Noodle were Corrupt, Pango, and Quittet. And Grahamus bore Ozma, and the father of Ozma was Othel and the Obscure Prince. Now the sons of Numero Benti, the sons of Numeron, were Lientho and High Harry, Hapscombe, and the son of Leantho was that, and the son of that was Ath. And Ath became the father of Oprah, and Harry became the father of Mish Capiche, and they were craftsmen. And Mish Capiche became the father of Nadrazuben. Numeron was the father of Neron. Neron became the father of those who dwell in 8 by 14 foot thatched huts and use pygmy shrimp swabs. And his brother's name was Enron, whose food had to be pre-chewed by Neron. Enron became the father of all those who celebrate in Numeron's birthday parade, playing the Pinkerog and the Nithelbot. Numeron became the father of Numbi. Then Numeron became the father of Nasik the Great. Numeron was the father of Kilfax, who just sat there. POV Kilfax. Is where my accent has no issues pronouncing these names. I played the Russian translation long ago. Oh, it's because the way some of these are written out, like some of them I'm like, oh, that's like, it's like words mashed together. And other ones I'm like, we gotta pronounce this like it's real, like eloquent, like, you know. One year, Numeron lost half of his beings off of a cliff. They were on one of their morning marches when the ground fell out from under one of their leaders, and half of the others followed before Numeron noticed their peril and was able to convince the rest to turn back. Though 150 beings marched straight off the cliff, not all of them perished. Many were some of the Numeron's hardiest creations. They two that were the strongest and came through the fall most intact were Numbi and Nasak the Great. The fall landed Numeron's beings and in the trench of Aramus. There, Numbi and Nasak set up kingdoms, the twin kingdoms of Numbi and Nasak. This did not go unnoticed by Numeron. He saw that as soon as the surviving beings thought that they were outside the presence of Numeron, they forgot him and his world. They began their own societies. Numeron observed their wickedness and saw that it was great. Numeron was sorry that he ever made any beings at all. He said to himself, not only do I have to keep cracking the whip, so to speak, over the... No. Sorry, there has to be a voice there. He said to himself, not only do I have to keep cracking the whip, so to speak, over these beings night and day, but to top it all off, as soon as I am out of their sight, they... Forget me. At least I still have 150 to keep under my thumb, and believe me, I will. The rest of these I can destroy. I'll cause a catastrophic explosion throughout the trench. That'll show them. But Numeron saw that Numbi was a blameless creature. Numbi was a righteous king. In fact, he was the only being in the trenches of Aramus that remembered Numeron. They called it the Trench of Aramus because of the swift trees that grow there. The actual name of the trench was Great Canyon of the Ruins of the Desolation No. 5. He tried and tried for 12.5 years to remind the subjects in his modest little kingdom about the past, but since Numeron would not take the time to make himself known, they would not remember him. His subjects thought Numbi was a fine king, but they would not heed his warning that the Creator would not tolerate their corruption forever. Nasak the Great, on the other hand, did not think Numbi was a fine king. He considered Numbi and his preaching about Numeron a nuisance. Nasak's kingdom grew every day, filling more and more of the trench. The southern sector extended from the wilderness of Xenofox along the side of Ibisum Purat? Yeah. Then the south side from the edge of Hapalanche, and the border went westward and went to the fountain of the waters of Neopthym. And the border went down to the edge of the hill, which is in the valley of Bonablanc, which is in the valley of Bupabumjoy, northward, and it went down to the valley of Daikunwang, to the slope of the Unja Wapong southward, and went down to Bok, and it extended northward and went to Sabuta, and went to Soysinga, which is opposite the ascent of Etna Nina, and it went down to the stone of Ru and the son of Lu, and it continued to the side of the front left-handed Fletchy northward, and went down to the left-handed Fletchy, and the border continued to the side of Hugla Dugla northward, and the border ended at the north bay of the Stinky Sea, at the south end of the Heliohagma. Moreover, the Heliohagma was its border on the east side, and the southern border extended from the end of the Stinky Sea eastward. Then the border turned direction from the south to the ascent of Akaak, Inzaba, and continued to Xenoflox, and its termination was to the south of Radish Barnamold, and reached Huz, and continued to Itzabigi, even unto the great river that is called Mifaluminex, the uncrossable, except in a couple of places where it gets slow and shallow, and onto the early risers clubhouse, and the broader direction turned from wait to go to the Brock of Pathag, and its termination was at the sea. As for the western border, it was the amazing colossal sea. That is, it was the best sea. Its coastline, this was the western border, and this was the north border. They drew the border line from the amazing colossal sea to Mount Pephilter, and they drew a line from Mount Pephilter to the Hodis Kelly. Then the border went up to the side of Hintba to the north, and went up through the hill country westward, and it ended at the wilderness of Cannabans, and from there the border continued to Quelp, the other side of Quelp, that is Reffelkekel, southward, and the border went down to Adamanchu, near the hill, which lies on the south of Lower Surgert, and the border extended from there, and turned round in the west side southward, from the hill which lies before Surgert southward, and ended Sour Bead, that is Sour Noble, a city of the sons of Mishkapish, and the termination of the border was at Blightsuch. This was the northern border. Now the eastern border reached the border of Edupated, southward to the... Oh, a hydrate, oh thank God. Oh, thank you. Whew. Get a little tea in me. I'm going to click that button. wilderness of Brainworm at the extreme south. Then it proceeds southward to the ascent of Quelfrum, and continued to Brainworm, and then went by the south to Radish Barmold, and continued to Larry, and went up to Ribathon Purchase, and oh my god, the Rebathon Purchase, and turned about to Clarksdale, and it continued to Stew Lumps, and proceeded to the Brook of Fothering, and the border went up to Burndaggett, and continued on the north undoubtedly moister, which is opposite the ascent of Sir Mapelt, which is on the south of the valley, and the border continued to the waters of Hosenplop, and the border went up to the top of the mountain, which is before the valley of Twisted Bam, which is a... Dude, the first part of this, I almost clicked the stop streaming button, and I would have been really sad. It's fine. We would have started the stream immediately again. Don't worry about it too much. The end of the valley of Gormthep toward the north, and from the top of the mountain, the border... I'm going to move this window. Curved to the spring of the waters of Rankness, and the border turned about Bolixix, westward to Mount Dusowski. They drew a line from Dusowski to Shemp, and the border went down from Shemp to Replay Engine. On the east side of and continued towards Pilo, which means I don't think I can put that much in my mouth, and the border went down and reached the slope and the east side of the sea have often fallen into, and the border went down to the Fibrillatin and its termination at the Stinky Sea. This is what Nasek the Great lands according to its borders all around. His thriving cities were all decadent and vile, but that is what sells. That is what the people want. Thus his kingdom grew, even talking in droves of defections from the good kingdom of Numbi. Yet still, not content with his great wealth of power, riches, and influence, he coveted the dry, rocky land of the kingdom of Numbi. Nasek plotted a war of conquest against Numbi. Numeron saw all of this, and knew that Numbi's number was coming up. So he paid a visit to Numbi to explain the catastrophic explosion. Numbi was alone when Numeron arrived. Numeron wanted to speak with Numbi and his wife, Grace, so Numbi went searching for her. The basement was flooded, so she was not there. She was in the attic, which in the kingdom of Numbi is called an... Is that the low? So Numbi found her there, high and dry. They went together to the patio where Numeron addressed them. Numbi, I am going to blow up this trench with all these vile beings in it, but I don't want to destroy you and Grace, so I want you to build a treehouse where you can stay and remain safe during the explosion. Oh, we finally got to the flood. Numeron gave Numbi a blueprint for the treehouse and described the exact location of the tree he wanted him to build in it. He also gave him very specific details for the construction of the treehouse. You shall make the treehouse from wheatby wood. It shall be split-level treehouse with an enclosed foyer, gabbled roof, and rough beam ceiling. Bay windows in the living room and in the kitchen over the sink. All the measurements are here on the floor plan. As Numbi and Grace worked on the treehouse, their neighbors, who formerly thought of Numbi as a fine king, came out to mock the construction of the treehouse. Numeron had given Numbi 7 days to complete the construction of the treehouse, and he was nearly finished. By then, Nasek the Great had completed his plans for conquest, and his armies were amassed and marching towards the capital of Numbi. The king Numbi and Grace entered the treehouse as instructed by Numeron. Numeron detonated the catastrophic explosion, destroying all the beings but Numbi and Grace in the twin kingdoms of Numbi and Nasek, the Great in the trench of Aramus. Now, this great explosion had disrupted the deep panels of the world. A hot green substance belched forth from the cracks in the panels and filled the canyon. Numbi and Grace watched as the hot green swirled around the foot of the tree. They were trapped. Now, wheatby wood is impossible to burn, so they were safe as long as they did not leave the treehouse. Many days passed as Numbi and Grace grew hungry. Numeron heard their plea, and he sent a great bird to nest in the tree in which the treehouse was built. Every morning the great bird laid a giant egg, which landed in Numbi and Grace's bed. They gently cracked the eggs open to find 5 course meals prepared, complete with a fine linen tablecloth and brass candelabra. They lived this way for many days until the hot green cooled to become just green. This new form of ground felt lovely to walk on. They lived happily for many ages. Grace died one beautiful day. Numbi died 3 days later. We did it. So you're, oh, I'm doing a good job. Thanks, guys. We have an ad starting in like 20 seconds, so I'm just gonna let that ad play out. We're gonna take a quick break at Autoborg, so I'm gonna like just take some breathing exercise and get a little drink. We are confirmed. We will be playing this game to completion. This is great. Oh, I think this is the first stream in a while I'm gonna run out of water. But of course, I drink from such a wide mouth cup that I absolutely just splashed it on my glasses. That's tough. That let me tell you, that's tough. It's fine. I am wearing a shirt. I can clean it. Doopy doopy doo. All right. Whew. Okay. Autoborg. Katar made a king named Ottoborg, designed to be happy and full of joy all day. Robots were a subject that Ottoborg had done a lot of research on, so it was only natural that he made 3 robots to help him make 7 little houses. The robots' names were Appy, Togor, and Bill. Appy was good at digging, Bill was good at building, and Togor was good at painting. That is why it is said today that if anyone is a good painter, he is Togor. In a very careless way, Ottoborg made 7 boys to live in his new houses. The boys' names were Hyphen, Newfin, Petri, Alfonso, Willie, Trombone, Aloe, Al. Oh, I gotta stretch my back. Duradius, Hapsicum, whose nickname was Creaker, Hondo, and Ed. Ottoborg's sons were easily identified by the loop formed on the top of each of their heads. Sometimes when they walked along, they would hook their head hoops on branches and hang there for days. Petrie was so tired of getting his head hooked onto things that he cut his own head off, which proved to be fatal. We go now to Ottoborg had forgotten to hold his world together with gravity, so one day his world fell apart in chunks, and his 7 sons and 3 robots floated aimlessly across creation. Hyphen's chunk of land got caught in the tail of the comet Pyragorge? Yeah. Named Pyragorge because it decreased in size during each orbit. The tail of Pyragorge was full of seeds because the comet once passed through the atmosphere of the planet Burpee. Hyphen cultivated his chunk so that he could grow flowers. He loved flowers and how happy and festive they can make a place often. Often, he would make a wreath of some of the flowers to decorate the loop in his head. Since he was the only one of his brothers with a nose, it seemed especially fitting that this is where Hyphen Newfin's chunk of land should be. He grew an extraordinary amount of flowers, but after a few years, it was not enough to satisfy his growing craving for flowers. His deepest burning desire was to be king of flowers, to have no rival in growing flowers. He actually did not know of anyone else who was growing flowers, but his unfettered imagination went wild, and he thought that there must be others who were cultivating and growing huge fields of flowers on the many planets and worlds he passed. Year after year, Hyphen worked the soil of his chunk of land to try and get it to produce more and more flowers. He developed fertilizers and plant foods. He grew nothing. He grew flowers, yeah. Though there were plenty of other types of seeds he could have planted, if he did notice some other type of plant growing amongst his flowers, he violently ripped it from the ground, cursing it, tearing it to shreds, and throwing it into the compost pile. It was so upsetting to him that he would, in fact, have to lie down for a nap afterwards. But no matter how many flowers the land produced, it was never enough for Hyphen. It almost seemed that the chunk of land was desperately trying to please its obsessed master, straining itself year in and year out to produce more flowers than it had the previous season. For many centuries, in fact, it did outperform itself. Each year, a dozen or so more flowers were produced. And Hyphen would ask, is that all? Then the yield began to decrease. The land was simply overworked, and it needed to rest. Hyphen reacted by pressing the land harder and harder to yield more. He was aggravated to no end. The more he did to increase the yield of flowers, the less the land was able to produce. Eventually, as each season went by, the yield decreased first 10, then 100-fold, and so on and so forth. Most of the land lay barren and still. If Hyphen found anything other than a flower growing, he would pull it up by the roots and throw it in the compost pile. As the land grew gray and sterile, Hyphen wasted away also. The loop on the top of his head drooped like a deflated tire. His desire to make his chunk of land a happier place with flowers had died. He spent his last days worrying and hovering over the last few flowers that struggled desperately to grow to maturity in the dust. He could not afford the time it took to weed the desolate fields, but only a few spindly vines grew here and there in the depleted soil anyway. When the last flower died, so did Hyphen Newfen. Neverhood got me through my first partner after 4 years before I learned I was a man enjoyer. That's wild. Puzzles and Dragons, a mobile game gacha, has survived one short relationship and one very long-term relationship that I've had. So I get it. Games are a cushion, and they're very comfy, and I respect that. Willie's chunk of land flew off into space, with Willie still inside his little red-roofed house. Ottoberg never saw Willie again. What Ottoberg did not know, which was... Oh, wait, is that the Willie? Is that Willie Trombone? Hold on. Was that Willie's chunk of land... It seems absolutely insane to me that we would not have the same Willie be Willie, but also, if they're two different Willies, that's crazy that we have the same name twice. I'm gonna be honest. Which was what the wall does, was that Willie's chunk of land drifted into the most dangerous part of space. You see, there were these nasty creatures called Victoids that flew about looking for food. Victoids had a giant, nasty mouth full of giant, nasty fangs, and of course the hair that they were covered in was nasty. Anyway, 4 Victoids stumbled upon poor Willie Trombone, who was all alone, just floating through space for quite some time. Willie, being the friendly type, held out a friendly hand and beckoned them, "Hey, hairy friends!" The Victoids screamed with glee. They saw Willie's yellow, supple flesh. They figured that he was not a fool and that they would have to trick him before they could eat him. They were wrong, for Willie Trombone was a fool above all other fools, and all of the time that they spent trying to trick him only gave the drifting giant Big Robot Bill enough time to arrive. Bill reached out with his mighty 3 arms and grabbed the floating chunk of land and hoisted himself up. Bill grew horrified as he saw his creator's son about to be devoured by vicious Victoids. Victoids make an appearance in Skull Monkeys? Oh, hell yeah. That evening, Willie Trombone dined on Victoids, saving their pelts to use as blankets on especially cold evenings. Willie and Bill became close friends, and they enjoyed each other's company for a long time floating in space, until one day they saw something very far away, something like a being in distress. Aloal kept a journal after Ottoberg's world broke into chunks. Here is copied the only known surviving excerpt from that diary. "My chunk of land has whooshed through a mysterious cloud of blue gas. The cloud is larger than some worlds that I have seen. I made a spur-of-the-moment decision to jump off the chunk and out into the gas. There is such a clutter of junk on the outer surface of the blue gas that it is virtually solid, yet kind of springy. Wow, am I tired? I think I'll lay myself down and take a snooze on the junk that clutters the surface of this blue gas, for I have not slept since before Ottoberg's world fell apart. I do not know how long I was sleeping, but I woke up because I felt something tiny and creepy crawling on my knee." Maybe you could upload this part of reading the lore on your channel. I think that's what I'm absolutely going to do. That Mystery Skull. It will be uploaded. It will be on the YouTube channel. Don't you fret none. "I reached down and swatted it with my hand. There was just a yellow spot of goop when I brought my hand up to see what kind of bug it was. Then I heard the weirdest whiny-miney mosh I have ever heard. I looked up and around behind me, but I did not see anything. And then I looked down on the ground. I found myself surrounded by very little beings. Some were laying down. I guess they must have fainted after seeing one of their own squashed by my big hand. I knew they were not bugs because they were all staring at me, and because they were not all crawling over me or biting me or injecting their eggs under my skin to incubate there and hatch later. These are very teeny tiny beings indeed. When I compare them to myself, the tallest is only as big as my thumb. Each tiny being has a great head in comparison to the rest of its body. In fact, the head takes up as much space as the body. The 2 remarkable features of the head are the size of the head compared to the little body, and its almost perfect roundness. It's like a melon on a sliver. Each being's head has a mouth, but other than that, there is only one other facial feature. Their globe heads are divided into an upper and lower hemisphere by a dark line at the equator. I perceived this dark line to be called in one. Oh, to be all in one. That's a parenthesis. The eyes, ears, and nose of these beings, since they employed them much in their observations of myself and in their mouths also, in communication with each other. I was very hungry, as I had traveled my chunk of land for 40 days and 40 nights, or something like that. Oh my god. Not more flood allegory. My first thought was to eat a handful of the little beings, but they held up their hands to ward me off and wailed in high-pitched whiny shrieks. The little beings understood that I was famished from the disgusting rumbling noises that my stomach made, seemingly from thin air. They produced tiny, delicate green crystals in great abundance. In my hand, they appeared as so many granules of green sugar, except not gritty, rather, they were gummy, and had a flavor that made me think green thoughts. As fast as I would pop a handful of the green stuff into my mouth, the little beings would bring me more. They also brought me a cup, though to them it would be a tub, of green liquid, which after I drank it, I perceived to be more wine, made from the green gummy crystals. It had a very fine flavor, and it made me think rather mellow green thoughts. As much for the big heads, my name for them, speak to me, I've never comprehended a single word they say, but I must help them drink their wine. One tiny being, who does most of the talking, seems to be in charge, since the others are always paying attention to him and they jump to action after he speaks. I suppose he's the father of these beings. While he was speaking, he also did strange dances. He looked really stupid waving his arms about like that. After a few weeks of the father trying to talk to me, some others of these big heads, dressed in tight, colorful clothing, came to bother me. Some rode upon a wheelie thing, around and around inside the loop on my head. One had the nerve to bounce up and down on my lips. I should have just opened my mouth and swallowed him whole. The only thing I did not really mind was the three beings that did flips and somersaults on the three spikes that stuck out of my chest. That was kind of fun. Days and days of the same thing now, eating green gummy crystals, drinking green wine, and watching the father guy, my name for him, flail about like he does, and listening to his high-pitched whining. Usually I just sit and smile at him, but when my cheeks get sore, I imitate whatever he is doing. If he nods, I nod. If he shakes his head, I shake mine. I will not write in this diary unless something weird or exciting happens. How long have I been here? It is hard to keep track of time when nothing new happens. Again, the father guy came out to bother me with his high-pitched whining, although it seemed more fevered this time. He kept pointing off away from where we sat. Then he stood up and stomped about, always pointing. It looked like a dance to me. As far as I knew, it was a dance, since I had never seen any of these little beings dance, so I stood up and danced. I tried to make the steps on my dance like the father guy's, but he was not at all pleased with my imitation. I was busy trying to perfect my dancing step when I was suddenly hit from all sides by food. I assumed that it was my part in this strange dance to try and catch as much of the food as I could in my mouth. I was doing pretty well, if I do say so myself. I suppose I have had a little advantage over the little beings, since my mouth is so much bigger than any of theirs. Perhaps this is why I was chosen for this special part of the dance. Throwing the food at me so that I finally could not keep up with the torrent of food. I do not mean to criticize, but many of the beings did not have very good aim. I was ducking and jumping, doing my best to get my face into place to catch the food, but a lot of it just splattered against my body. A lot more just landed on the ground, so that I stepped in a bunch of it as I moved around, and still more of the big heads came out to where they were all, and they joined in the food throwing. I felt a little ridiculous, since I could not possibly keep up with the pace of the dance, and the little guys really showed no signs of letting up. By now, a big circle of the beings surrounded me, all of them whining and shrieking some chant. I suppose I decided to step out of the circle and figured I would get another chance to get this dance right sometime later. But even after I stepped out of the circle, they continued to throw the food at me. I did not even try to catch it. I really wanted to practice this dance, try to do better next time. As I stepped further away to get out of their throwing range, they finally stopped. They stopped their whining and shrieking chant too, and soon the big heads were cheering and clapping. I turned back to accept. Their applause. I think they appreciated that I tried hard to catch all the food, because as soon as I turned back, they started throwing more. I did not want to dance this food-catching dance anymore. I turned my back to the big heads with big round heads and walked away as fast as I could. Welcome in. Drone on. Drone on? Drone on? Drone on 1? Yay, the Neverhood. We're almost through reading the lore. This has been so much more than I thought it was going to be when I first committed to reading. Rate the game so far? Oh, so far the game's great. I don't like to rate things. That's a lie. I do like to rate things pretty early on. So far, just based on the lore of the game and like everything, it looks great. I do like the aesthetic a lot. I'm gonna give it like a solid 7.5 out of 10, right? There's room to grow. I don't want to rank it too high right now because I haven't seen a whole lot. But I everything so far is great. Oh boy. Well, this is optional. It is optional, as I have learned. As I have learned to this point. Before I knew it, I was walking up to another group of tiny beings. These beings remained silent as I approached, no whining or shrieking or moaning. These beings are just as tiny as the first beings I lived amongst, but they have different heads. Their heads seem to be the right size for their little... But how are you today, Duran 1? Their faces are featureless except for a long, needle-like proboscis. These tiny beings seem to use this protuberance for all their communication and all their senses, sight, smell, taste, hearing, feeling. Some of these beings pointed their needle noses here and there over my body as I approached, but most of them kept pointed at my feet. Just before I stepped up in front of the needle noses, my name for them, they began clapping. By the time I actually stopped, they were cheering and whooping and jumping up and down. This went on for quite a while. Then they began to quiet down, and the crowd began to split down the middle. I noticed one needle nose coming through the crowd to stand in front of me. This needle nose seemed to have respect for all the other needle noses, because they all gave their attention to him as he stood in front of me. I could tell because all their needle-like noses were pointed at him instead of me. He must be their father guy. After looking at me over a while, the father guy started speaking at me. I did not understand anything that he said to me, but I smiled at him the entire time that he spoke to me. I kept smiling at them all. This is a great continuation of the first story, which is why I'm so invested in reading this story now, because now having the knowledge of that they are big heads and needle heads, it makes it even more radical the fact that a king was able to bamboozle the rest of his people into being, no, I'm your king, don't worry, I'm your king. After the father guy finished, I was trying to think of something to do. I decided to say something back to them. Well, it's really nice, I said, for all of you to come out to greet me today. You know I couldn't stand for any more of that food-throwing dance that the big heads do. You don't have a food-throwing dance, do you? Do you guys understand me? I smiled some more after I finished and waited for something to happen. All the needle noses did was turn around and walk away. They kept looking over their soldiers as they left, but they did not seem to care if I followed or if I stayed where I was. I decided I might as well stay where I was. I sat down and waited to see what would happen. For days and days, I sat there and nothing happened. At first, the needle noses kept looking over their shoulders at me, but after a few days, they seemed to forget I was there. After a week or so of being ignored, I was hungry, so I followed some of the needle noses around as they went about their daily chores, and every so often they would look over their shoulders at me. Mostly, what they did all day was spit on the ground. It was a disgusting sight. They would form lines and walk through the fields and the... Oh, it does have some lore things that explain the origin of things people in this game, but it's buried by sheer volume. But absolutely, thank you, Taco Pancakes, for hydrate. Oh, big hydrate. Day after day, all the time spitting. Day after day, no matter where I was, no matter what I observed them do, they were always spitting. I do not know why I did not notice it before. And then I noticed all their food came from the fields they had been spitting in this whole time. Food from spit! Now that they were harvesting, they had time to notice me. For the first time since I arrived in the Needle-Nose land, they offered me food. How could I accept it after seeing them spit all the time to produce the food? I ran away, sickened to my stomach. After all, what I am most sure must be something like 100 years. I could not take living among any of these tiny beings any more. I was being starved by the needle noses, and I did not want to go back to the big heads to have them throw more food at me during their crazy little dance. I felt defeated and hung my head in objection. Now, since I was standing on a cloud of blue gas, as the gas swirled and spun, I could often see through the gas, or at least deep into the center of it. Something fuzzy, as if in the distance of the other side of the cloud, caught my eye. The shape grew larger and a little more defined as it came close. You know, I was going to make the for 1,000 years DBZA a bridge joke, but I feel like it's better to ask why the hell does Twitch have a Roblox tab? Its existence offends and disgusts me. All at once, I clapped my hands and whooped for joy. I did not need a crystal clear view of the object to recognize it as the very chunk of land that had broken off of Ottoborg's world and brought me to this miserable place. At once, I realized what was happening. The chunk of land was caught in a circular orbit around the blue gas. Must be going in a straight line that took it through 2 points in that circle. I cried out, "For sure I am the luckiest of all of Ottoborg's sons." Carefully, as it passed through the cloud of blue gas, I jumped off the springy surface of debris and onto my chunk of my father's world. I have not been on the chunk of land for about 3 minutes, long enough to make this latest entry in my journal. Gee, it's great to be back home again. I hope I never... Here the excerpt of the diary ends abruptly. It is said that the chunk of land that Alo Al was on suddenly smashed into the dirt clod that collided with it head-on. Both the chunk and the clod were traveling at great speeds upon impact. Nothing was ever seen of Alo Al again. Creaker's chunk of land was the biggest, and it was full of lakes. There was actually more land covered by water than not. Creaker survived many centuries on the chunk. Also, welcome in Bigu Basu. Fun fact, there have been more popular Roblox games with PDF devs than non-PDF devs. Absolutely. Yep, I believe that. I forgot that was a banned term. I am pleased. The chunk, long enough to learn how to create and build giant replicas of spoons and butter knives, enormous buckets filled with oversized sesame seeds, and huge loaves of bread, among other things. Creaker used the soil of the dry land on his chunk as the weather material, or nope, where do I get weather? What the hell? Okay. Material for his sculptures. Whenever he would get tired of looking at one of these colossal sculptures, he would just throw it into the lake. Each of the colossal sculptures displaced enormous amounts of water, covering up a little more dry land each time. Oh, I'm dying. Excuse me. Time was thrown into a lake. When he was not sculpting, Creaker would be out, scrutinizing one of his previous sculptures. He was very critical of his work. He always concluded that the sculpture did not communicate the concept that was the impetus behind their work. Or he saw a hair or a bug sticking out of the clay. In any case, he was always frustrated. None of his work seemed to express his vision just the right way. He could not quite put his finger on the problem, but his general feeling was that it had to do with the size of the sculpture. If only it was a little bit bigger, he would often say to himself. Then he would heave the thing into the nearest lake. His mind was focused intently on making each new sculpture larger than the previous one, whether it be a giant replica of a red pod bulb, or a mostly empty jar that had been sitting in the back of the valley for 8 weeks. Eventually, he spent very little time examining his finished works, but with an exclamation of disgust, he would throw the work into the nearest lake, which after a while seemed to be conveniently closer and closer, just as it was done, and immediately start on the next one. The replicas were by this time so large that he had to climb them to work on the upper parts. Cheese. Bro's vocal cords are dying just a little bit. It's okay. So in case you didn't see, the Japanese Cherry Blossom Festival is canceled because you weebs can't act right. Aw, not tourism ruining Japan for the 5th year in a row. Don't bucket me in with them. Also, by the way, that's rude. The largest sculpture Creaker ever completed was of a baby's arm holding an apple. It was such a titanic work that he had to use spikes and ropes to get up it. When he finished, he had to rappel down the back of the arm. He backed up to get a good look at it, but could not back up very far since he was on a beach. Again, his disgust and frustration overcame him as he said, "No, no, no, that's not it at all." Then Creaker rushed at the base of the sculpture to push it into the water. He barely budged it, but it was top-heavy, since the apple was at the top was enormous, so that his push was enough motion to cause the sculpture to fall over. Creaker turned to start on a new sculpture. He had in mind a great pair of tongs digging into a bucket of sand, and he never saw the tidal wave that fell upon him. Hondo's chunk of land ended up on the back of a giant animal that lived in a desert in an undocumented planet. Hondo seemed to like the animal enough, and he was so small that the animal did not detect his existence. There was not much that Hondo could tell about what the animal looked like. It was a colossal beast compared to Hondo. He took many survey journeys that went on for days and days across the top of the beast to see if it looked different from other locations. As he walked, he noticed the color of the ground changed. Presently, he would be passing over an area that was brown. Then 15 feet or so further, he would pass over an area that was yellow. The surface he walked on was hard and mostly smooth, but it was terraced into short, flat little hills all over. When he came to the edge, he was looking around and he almost fell off. He got down on his stomach to look over the edge. There was nothing between him and the ground, which was very far away. If he had jumped, the fall would have broken every bone in his body. He was on the lip of an overhang, and he reached under it to see if he could feel how far back it went. But the overhang went straight back and kept going. Then he carefully lowered his head over to look and see how far back this overhang went. He could not see it, though. There was so much dark shadow he could only see about as far as his hand reached. Hondo got up and decided to walk directly away from the edge. He grew very tired almost immediately as the surface began ascending right away. It took a day to reach the summit, so he slept there. In the morning, Hondo was able to see very far from the top of the animal. The sky was all blue and the land was all beige, and he saw that the highest hilly part of the animal sloped down in all directions around from where he stood. Ed's chunk just spun in place forever. Your voice sounds great. It is perfect for this lore. I appreciate that. Thank you. We have another hydrate. Thank you, JB Shannon. It's very, like, the walking is very, like, I don't know, lackadaisical, I'll say. All right, we are now on Homen. Homen? Homen! Kater made Homen and gave him 2 crowns and let him decide what to do with the extra one. Homen had a son named Pinto Bunyan, to whom he immediately gave his 2nd crown. Pinto Bunyan helped Homen with all that he did. Homen made a bunch of beings called Ynts. The Ynts were blue and looked like little bugs. The blue Ynts spent their first day of existence fashioning small spears. Soon the Ynts had broken up into small communities. Each community had a specific task to accomplish, which helped all the other Ynt communities. Blue Ynt South was in charge of growing food. Blue Ynt North built housing for other communities, and so on and so forth. Where are my Ynt appreciators in chat? Where they at? Where they at? Other communities, and so on and so forth. All was peaceful and working efficiently, so Pinto Bunyan was made some Ynts of his own, only his were white. Now it came about when the white Ynts began to multiply on the face of the land, and the daughters were born to them, that the sons of the blue Ynts saw that the daughters of the white Ynts were beautiful, and they took wives for themselves, whomever they choose. The Hutsamutsa were in the world in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of blue Ynts came into the daughters of white Ynts, and they bore children to them. Those were the mighty Ynts, who were of old, Ynts of renown. The white Ynts instantly mingled with the blue Ynts, but they refused to acknowledge the community system of the blue Ynts. The white Ynts enjoyed the fruits of all the blue Ynts' hard work, but did not help them work at all. It only took one white Ynt to throw an egg at a blue Ynt one morning to cause a dreadful feud. So, Hemhemhema of the blue Ynts rose with all the blue Ynts of a war to go up to the white Ynt east, and Hemhemha chose 30,000 blue Ynts, valiant warriors, and sent them out at night, and he commanded them, saying, "See, you are going to ambush the city." from behind it. Do not go very far from the city, but all of you be ready. Then I and all the blue Ynts who are with me will approach the city, and it will come about when they come out to meet us at the first, that we will flee before them. And they will come out after us until we have drawn them away from the city, for they will say, "They're fleeing before us as at the first." So we will flee before them, and you shall rise from your ambush and take possession of the city. Then it will be when you have seized the city that you shall set the city on fire. See, I have command you. Most of those Ynts of war in attendance could not understand Himhamha, for the language he used was flowery and outdated. Well, that voice wasn't very flowery. Oh well, 2020. Still, few in attendance there, from among all of those in attendance, did hearken and understand. Even did they reckon the savings of Hemhemha, and straightway did they clue in their buddies who were just lollygagging about, scratching their heads. At once, all who heard this explanation did understand Himhimha's plan. So Himhimha sent them away, and they went to the place of ambush and remained between White Int West and White Int East, and the west side of White Int East. But Himhimha spent that night at the Wagon Leisure Inn. Now Himhimha rose early in the morning and mustered the Blue Ynts, and he went up with the elders of the Blue Ynt before the Blue Ynts to the White Ynt East. Then all the Blue Ynts of war who were with him went up and drew near and arrived in front of the city and camped on the north side of the White Yin East. Now, there was a valley between him and White Yin East, and he took about 5,000 Blue Yints and set them in ambush between White Yin East and White Yin East. On the west side of the city, so they stationed the Blue Yints, all the army that was on the north side of the city, and its rear guard on the west side of the city, and Himhimha spent that night in Sid's garden spot. Lodge. Lynn's garden spot lodge. Don't worry, you'll get accustomed to the footsteps here in a moment when you'll need to walk all the way back. And it came about when the king of the White Yin East saw it, that the men of the city hurried and rose up early and went out to meet the Blue Yints in battle, he and all his people at the appointed place before the desert plain. But he did not know that there was an ambush against him behind the city, and Hemhemha and all the Blue Yints pretended to be beaten before them, and fled by the way of the wilderness. And all the people who were in the city were called together to pursue them, and they pursued Hemhemha, and were drawn away from the city. So not an Int was left in White Yint East or White Yint West, who had not gone out after the Blue Yints. And they left the city unguarded and pursued Blue Yints. This whole section has the energy of like you're taking a test, right? And you finish the first page and you go to flip over to the next page and you realize it's both front and back pages and it's still like 10 pages thick. They left the city unguarded and pursued Blue Yints. Then Homan said to the Hemhemha, "Stretch out yours." Wait, Homan's a different voice. "Stretch out the spear that is in your hand toward White Yint East, for I will give it unto your hand." So Himhemha stretched out the spear that was in his hand toward the city, and the men in ambush rose quickly from their place, and when he had stretched out his hand, they ran and entered the city and captured it, and they quickly set the city on fire. When the men of White Yin East turned back and looked, behold, the smoke of the city ascended to the sky, and they had no place to flee this way or that, for the people who had been fleeing to the wilderness turned against the pursuers. When Hemhemha and all the Blue Yints saw that the men in ambush had captured the city and that the smoke of the city ascended, they turned back and slew the men of White Yin East, and the others came out from their city to encounter them, so that they were trapped in the midst of the Blue Yints, some of this side and some on that side, and they slew them until no one was left of those who survived or escaped. But they took alive the king of White Yin East and brought him to Himhimha. Now it can be about when the Blue Yints had finished killing all of the inhabitants of White Yin East in the field, in the wilderness where they pursued them, and all of them were fallen by the spear until they were destroyed. Then all the Blue Yints returned to the White Yin East and struck it with the spear. And all who fell that day, both male and female, were 12,000, all the people of White Yin East. For For Hemema did not withdraw his hand with which he stretched out the spear until he had utterly destroyed all the inhabitants of White Int East. So Hemema burned White Int East and made it a heap forever, a desolation until this day, and he hanged the king of White Int East on a tree until evening, and at sunset Hemema gave a command, and they took his body down from the tree and threw it at the entrance of the city gate and raised over it a great heap of stones that stands to this day. So Ichigoplatzi and all the White Ynts who were with him arose by night and lay in wait against Blue Yint South in 4 companies. Now Pimento Lufa, the son of Texadrill, went out and stood in the entrance of the city gate and said, "Who is Ichigoplasty that we should serve him?" And Ichigoplasty and the White Ynts who were there with him arose from the ambush, and when Pimento Lufa of the Blue Ynts saw the White Ynts, he said to Factotron, "Look, Ynts are coming, down from the top of the mountains." But Factotron said to him, "You are seeing the shadow of the mountains as if they were Ynts." And Pimento Lufa spoke again and said, "Behold, Ynts are coming, down from the highest part of the land, and one company comes by the way of the diviner's sandwich." Then Factotron said to him, "Where is your boasting now with which you said, 'Who is Ichigoplasty that we should serve him?' Are these not the White Ynts whom you despised? Go out now and fight with them." So Pimento Lufa went out, and before the leaders of Blue Yint South had fought with Ichigoplasty, and Ichigoplasty chased him, and he fled before him, and many fell wounded at the entrance of the gate. Then Ichigoplasty remained at Blue Yint West, but Factotron drove out Pimento Lufa and his relatives so that they could not remain in Blue Yint South. Now it came about the next day that the Blue Yints went out to the field, and it was told to Ichigoplasty that he took his White Ynts and divided them into 3 companies and lay in wait in the fields. When he looked and saw the Ynts coming out from the city, he arose against them and slew them. Then Ichigoplasty and the company who was with him dashed forward and stood in the entrance of the city. I sent a good meme. Oh, hell yeah. I will get to it. The picture I like is the one of Hoborg giving Robot Bill his teddy. If you get to it while I'm away. Okay. The other 2 companies then dashed against all who were in the field and slew them. And Ichigoplasty fought against the city all that day, and he captured the city and killed the Blue Yints who were in it, then razed the city and sowed it with salt. When all the leaders of the Tower of the Blue Yint South heard it, they entered the inner chamber of the Temple of Holmark, or the Door. And it was told to Ichigoplasty that all the leaders of the Tower of the Blue Yint South were gathered together. So Ichigoplasty went up to Mount Chlorescence. Get it, like fluorescent, but it's chlorine, so fluorescent. That's funny. That's real. That's a good one. I like that one. That one's fun. And all the Ynts who were with him, and Ichigoplasty took an axe in his hand and cut down a branch from the trees and lifted it and laid it on his shoulder. Then he said to the Ynts who were with him, "What you have seen me do, hurry and do likewise." And all the Ynts also cut down each one of his branches and followed Ichigoplasty and put them down in the inner chamber and set the inner chamber on fire over those inside, so that all the men of the Tower of the Blue Yint South also died, about 1,000 men and women. Then Ichigoplasty went to Blue Yint Southwest, and he camped against Blue Yint Southwest and captured it. But there was a strong tower in the center of the city, and all the men and women with all the leaders of the city fled there and shut themselves in, and they went up on the roof of the tower. So Ichigoplasty came to the tower and fought against it and approached the entrance of the tower to burn it with fire. But a certain female Yint threw a 16-ton weight on Ichigoplasty's head, crushing his skull. Then he called quickly to a young Yint, his armor-bearer, and said to him, "Draw your spear and kill me, lest you be said of me, 'A female Yint slew him.'" So the young Yint pierced him through, and he died. And when the White Yints saw that Ichigoplasty was dead, each departed to his home. When the Blue Yints and the White Yints started to fight, so did Pinto Bunyan and Homan. Cater stepped in and took Pinto Bunyan's crown away and gave it to a new being he made called Arvin. The picture I liked is, yeah, okay, yeah, we got that. I read Hoborg. Oh, Hoborg, here we go. Is this the last one? I think so. Cater wanted to see what would happen if he made a creative being with a big heart. Cater named him Hoborg, meaning big heart. Hoborg was given a crown, and he set out into a void of clouds as Cater watched him from a distance. Hoborg liked the idea of making a place for some beings of his own. He knew that the clouds that swirled around him would make a perfect sky, so he just needed to make some land. One thing that concerned Hoborg was that perhaps some of his beings would come out of bad. He wanted to make beings which he could enjoy forever, but he did not want to force them to love and respect him. He decided that he would make his beings with the ability to choose right and wrong. Working everything out in his head, he figured he could make one child at a time and see if he turned out good before he started on the next. Hoborg made a tiny scale model of his world in clay, or clay, to see if it had looked the way he had imagined it. He spent about 20 years designing the shapes and colors of this place, which he would call the Overhood. The Overhood? Like the Neverhood? Are we in hell? Hello, Sponge Violet Everpant. Hello. You're joining in. You're going to get an ad real quick, but that's because it's automated. I want you to know that I love that you're here. Thank you for tuning in. And how was your day? He needed some clay to make his world, and the only place where clay could be found was that of the purity and quality Hoborg wanted would take 400 years to reach. He was so anxious to get... You're going to play Mario Kart Wii with your sister? Oh, hell yeah. Also called Ademia. Yes. Ademia, yes. Okay. Besides that, not much. Mario Kart Wii is great. Mario Kart Wii is probably the first game that I functionally played with another human being. Academia? Okay. With how everything I've been reading so far, Arslan, I was like, Ademia? Yeah, that makes sense. Oh, he was so anxious to get started that he asked for help from Katar. Katar, thank you for making me with such a fine crown. Everything in life is just wonderful. But I was wondering... Hoborg got down on one knee. Can you help me to the clay of highest quality? Katar laughed. That would take even me a long time to reach. What's wrong with the clay that I have already given you? Hoborg answered, I like the clay you gave me for planning things, but I was hoping for the best ingredients for my beings. You see, I want them to last forever, and clay only lasts for a few thousand years. Katar was impressed. Here is a scope that will help you see as far as you need to. You will be able to pick the shortest path to clay, which should save you quite a few years of travel. Hoborg received the scope. Oh, thank you, Katar. Katar, you are very generous. Hoborg started on his journey that same day. Looking through the scope, he could clearly see the mountain of clay he needed to build the Overhood. Every day was the same. Hoborg awoke before sunrise so that he could travel far without heat. But before he set off to travel each morning, he thought loftily. Respectful thoughts about Katar. Hoborg, in his ever-so-deep voice, again, way to just miss the mark on a voice for the second time in a row, would sing songs to the ground about how good it was to have been made. After a morning's journey, Hoborg would cover himself up in soil and rest. He resumed his mission in the afternoon and walked toward the great mountain of clay until late in the evening. After 20 years of travel, Hoborg grew very lonely. Soon he would not stand to go on. He found a chunk of land upon which he could stop and rest. It had one spindly vine growing on it, and Hoborg lay down beside it to enjoy the shade it provided, so he might be delivered from his discomfort. And Hoborg was extremely happy about the plant. But at dawn the next day, a worm came and attacked the plant, and it withered. I don't know why I had, my brain put a comma there. My bad. And it came about when the sun came up, that a scorching east wind and the white light of the sun beat down on Hoborg's head so that he became faint and begged to die, saying, "Death is better to me than life." I had a phone call from a local uni. They said I just earned a degree on your stream and the diploma is out for delivery. Hell yeah! Get that dual major, get that dual degree in claim and lore. Oh, we're gonna play for a little bit. Just imagine this, a cliche that happened in my vacation flashes back to me throwing up at the airport restroom. The seat freezes mid throw. Yep, that's me. You're probably wondering how I got there. Oh, Hoborg could not get himself to do anything. He just lay there. Hoborg began to scrape, absent-mindedly, at the dirt where his hand lay. Then he said, "Scraping is better to me than death." It was a fine dry dirt that was packed down and baked hard by the white sun. His fingers bent, lifted, and Stretched, bent, lifted, and stretched, bent, lifted, and stretched, scratching relentlessly. His fingers scraped through the layers of fine dust and grit day after day. Just a few grains of dust and grit required weeks of scraping before it broke loose from the ground. The ground was that hard and compacted. More and more dirt added to the pile under his palm each month. During the years that passed, the only sounds he heard were the scraping of his hand on the dirt and his breathing. After a pile big enough to pick up was formed under his hand, he grabbed it, spat on it, and squeezed it and squeezed it and squeezed it until his hand turned white and his knuckles made. Oh, hell yeah, with that 7-stream streak! Woo! Returns with food. Welcome back with the food. We're almost through the lore. You didn't miss much. You know how you dump drinks into one big thing at the airport? I like it. I call it the airport jungle juice. Oh my god. Popping noises. Hoborg sat up and looked at what lay in his palm as he opened his fists. He saw that he had formed a clod of dirt. Now the worm that had attacked the spindly vine and caused it to wither popped his head out of the ground and admired the clod, saying, "My, what a nice clod of dirt you've got there!" Looking Hoborg up and down, it asked, "Did you make that all by yourself?" "Yes, I did," said Hoborg. "If I were you," said the worm, "I'd stay right here and make more dirt clods. You could fashion them into beings and populate this chunk of land with them." After all, did you really see a pile of clay through the scope Katar gave you? Or did you just want to see it because Katar said you would be able to see it? Hoborg answered, "Actually, Katar said the scope would enable me to see the shortest path to the clay, and because of that I should save quite a few years of travel, but I've been traveling for so long." And the worm said to Hoborg, "You haven't saved any time in your journey. You haven't ever seen clay, have you? I wonder if Katar has ever seen clay." When Hoborg thought of it that way, he also began to wonder, was there even such a thing as clay? He had only heard about it. He'd never seen any. Then the thought occurred to Hoborg. Sure, it had taken many years to collect enough dirt to make this one clod, but he had plenty of time, and he knew there was plenty of dirt right here. He did not have to keep searching for clay, or he could continue his journey, not even knowing when or if he would even reach his goal. He considered making more dirt clods and creating clod beings right there to populate the chunk of land he had stopped on to rest. Sure, it would take a lot of spit, but Hoborg figured he could find a way to work up enough, and now that he had a purpose for scraping, he could use both hands and save time. First, he would finish creating a being from the dirt clod he already made. Hoborg knelt beside the thing and put together the hideous outrage of dirt stretched out, and then, as he worked the clod with his hand, it began to show signs of life, and stirred with an uneasy, half-vital motion. Frightful it must have been, for supremely frightful was the effect of his endeavor to mock the stupendous mechanism of his own creator, Katar. His success terrified Hoborg. He cast away his odious handiwork, horror-stricken, as far and with as much velocity as he could throw it. He hoped that left to itself, out wherever it might land, the slight spark of life which had received such imperfect animation would subside into dead matter. Hoborg went to sleep in the belief that the silence of the grave would quench forever the transient existence of the hideous clod which he had looked upon as the cradle of life. He slept, but in a dream he was awakened. He opened his eyes, beheld the horrid thing standing at his side under the spindly vine, in Hoborg's dream it grew back, and looked down on him with yellow spit oozing but speculative eyes. Hoborg awoke for real, and was horror-stricken. Babe, wake up, new ocean dropped. Apparently there's a southern ocean now. The scientists asked Dormammu to bargain and traded the 9th planet for a 5th ocean. Oh, man. Because he saw something far away, and it was growing less and less far away with every minute, at first he thought it was the clawed creature coming back to get him. But as it got closer, he could see that it was much bigger than a dirt clod. A short while passed before Hoborg could make out the shape. It was a piece of land with a little red-roofed house on it. There was a big robot and a little being on it. Hoborg realized that these folks would pass him if he did not act quickly, so he took off his belt from around his waist and made a lasso. He figured that it was still not long enough to reach this passing, and landmass. So in an act of desperation, he gouged a chunk of his chest out and rolled it into the great snake that extended to the end of his belt. This contraption was long enough to lasso the land, which halted when the cord went taut. The big robot pointed to Hoborg's chest and said, "Me, Bill! Me, Bill!" Hoborg waved and answered, "Me, Hoborg! I am Hoborg!" The smaller being, slightly smaller than Hoborg, but 1/50th the size of Bill, pointed to Hoborg's chest and said, "Me thank him's pointing your torso! Big ouch!" Hoborg had not realized that his guts were oozing out of the large fissure he had created in his chest. "Good Cater, what am I going to do?" The small being took off his own belt and instructed Bill to carry him down to where Hoborg was. The being jumped into Bill's hand and he walked over to where Hoborg sat, about to pass out. "Me, Willie," the stranger said as he tied his belt over Hoborg's chest, clamping the severed sections together and closing up the self-inflicted injury. Hoborg placed his hand on Willie's shoulder. "Hello, Willie. I'm Hoborg, and you just saved my life." Willie did not seem to acknowledge this statement. Hoborg figured Willie was not altogether sane, but he was grateful just the same. After a few days of rest, Hoborg decided it was best to continue on his journey. Hoborg asked Bill and Willie if they wanted to join him. Bill just said, "Me, Bill! Me, Bill!" and Willie mumbled a bunch of gibberish to himself. Hoborg liked their company, but he figured that they did not want to come along, so he tearfully said goodbye. Hoborg was surprised to find that when he walked, Bill and Willie followed him. Hoborg did not question them, he just grew happy inside and continued toward the clay. Bill is one of the oldest beings, yes. I left, did numerical analysis homework, and came back. Well, welcome back, random. Big Robot Bill, Hoborg found out his full name because it was engraved on the back of his foot, proved most useful for carrying Willie and Hoborg and the little red-roofed house over canyons, too steep to climb. Hoborg noticed, while being carried by Big Robot Bill, that Bill's chest had a switch inside it marked "Good" at the present setting and "Bad" on the other setting. Hoborg dared not find out the "bad" setting did, but he thought it must be a poorly thought-out attempt at dealing with the same problems he had when he was planning to make the beings that were capable of doing right and wrong. Within a few more years, the three made it to the clay. It was a mountain of the purest clay in the known universe, and Hoborg found it to be the higher quality than he or even Cater imagined it would be. He filled his crown up with a few good-sized chunks of clay. Bill and Willie carried a few hunks to help. Altogether, Hoborg figured there was enough to make his overhood and about 2,000 beings. On the way back to where Hoborg had started his journey, a tickburger came upon the trio. A tickburger is something all icky and sticky that Cater always said to run away from. Hoborg yelled for Bill to grab Willie and himself and make a run for it. A tickburger is made to want what other beings have. He could tell that they had a bunch of clay, so he licked his lips, exposed his fangs, and said, "Clay!" As fast as Bill could run, it was not fast enough to outrun the nimble Tickburger. The ID panel on the back of Bill's foot was removed, and one swipe of Tickburger's razor-sharp claws. Hoborg saw that Bill was slowing down and that they would soon perish if they did not do something quick. Hoborg threw all of the spare clay over to the ground below. He figured the amount remaining would still be enough to make a medium-sized world and about 500 beings. The problem was that as soon as Hoborg dumped the clay, Tickburger gobbled it up, and it was still closing in on Bill. Hoborg nervously threw some more clay out, and this time Tickburger ate it, but slowed down considerably. This was not good enough, since Bill was also slowing down considerably from the exhausting pace. He simply could not carry on much longer. Hoborg decided that he would have to be happy with about 20 beings in a small neighborhood as a world. With that, he dumped most of his clay over with just a bit left for his greatly reduced plans. It worked this time, since Tickburger stopped completely and could not follow them since he was stuffed with so much clay. Bill continued under Hoborg's guidance, holding the little red-roofed house over his shoulder where Willie and Hoborg could ride and room together. After many years' journey, Hoborg returned and was ready to build the Everhood, a neighborhood that would last forever, so long as nothing went wrong. Oh, and that's him giving the teddy bear. This is Jamie Shannon's favorite scene. We did it! We got to the end! Oh my god, we didn't get to the end. Just kidding. Now we're on Arvin. Did you know this is the lore that never ends? Did you know? Oh boy. I like the lore a lot. It's very fun. Arvin is a sleek and fast being who created thousands of beings from the first moment he was given a crown. Besides his crown, there is an aerodynamic fin off the back of his head because he is so fast. His style of creating is fast. Get in, create, get out. He does not keep account of the worlds he creates, nor the beings he creates to inhabit them. Kator made Arvin quiet, serious, lean, and efficient. Arvin has spoken only once to some of the beings he has created. Kator wanted to make a being who would fill up the rest of the creation with more worlds and planets and beings. Arvin does not even take the time to create beings who will be creators themselves. Arvin now has 7 worlds that his beings inhabit. Nordo is a world consisting of a group of 7 planets, each with a civilization of its own. The inhabitants of each planet have a distinct mythology with the common element of the 7 planets fighting amongst each other. But they never do in reality. This makes the various races of the 7 planets fear each other intensely, though there is no real need to do so. The 7 planets are Itsnak, inhabited by the Skull Monkeys. Skull Monkeys, another name drop. The lore that gets updated through ChatGPT before it was invented. Just put this into the source code for it. This is modern day religion. Okay, rate the lore. Right now, we're at a solid like 8.5 out of 10. I'm loving it. Skull monkeys look like monkeys with skulls for heads. Skull monkeys spend the whole day chasing each other in the nervous, hyperactive way. While skull monkeys would love to scare the young of other civilizations, they cannot, for other worlds are not accessible to them. For this reason, transportation research is a primary concern of the smarter skull monkeys. Alphajaw, the leader of the kingdom of the skull monkeys, hoped to have a spaceship of some kind built to fly to planets full of youth to scare. One day, while Alphajaw busied himself with the detailed plans of a great ramp to launch a great rocket, his assistant, Harry Joe, climbed down the great fort and decided to rest at the watering hole. Harry Joe drank deeply from the pure waters and looked at himself in the still reflection. He poked his finger in his ovicular foramen and wondered what it would be like to have flesh on his head. I am very ugly, he thought Harry Joe. This was an odd thought, since most skull monkeys have no concern for appearances. For this reason, I will cast myself into the water and live no more, he said, and then jumped. His body made a loud splash as he felt the cool water touch every part of his body. His hair grew deeply saturated with water until all of the air bubbles wriggled out their way up to the surface. Harry Joe exhaled and sank even deeper, far deeper perhaps than any other skull monkey had ever gone before. Weightless, he refused to move or struggle. Dark water surrounded him, and he thought about his youth. Harry Joe remembered a particularly unpleasant day many years before when he was just a lad skull monkey receiving his lesson from an elder named Lojaw. Many are the hairs on our backs, said Lojaw, and likewise are the number of skull monkeys in this world. Harry Joe looked up to Lojaw and the father figure for weeks. Harry Joe followed every move Lojaw made. If Lojaw went into the forest to forage for nuts and grubs, so went Harry Joe. If Lojaw tended to his garden, so did Harry Joe. One especially warm and beautiful day, Harry Joe was on his way to Lojaw's cave when he saw a great crowd gathered around the entrance. Many skull monkeys were howling to show their mournful state. Lojaw's wife was the gloomiest of all. She was like a brittle fall leaf blown into a corner. Harry Joe, do we get the 8.5 out of 10? I want you to understand that we're at an 8.5 out of 10, just because we're not done with it yet. Pushed his way to the front of the crowd, demanding to see his mentor. Lojaw gently swung by his neck, hung from a braided piece of cloth his 2 children had made. His children were the first to find him in this state. The peculiar thing that Harry Joe recalled was that he had shaved himself completely naked. Arnaud, onto the next planet. That's... So, the lore is doing that thing where we go, oh, look, funny man make robot, haha, he give him teddy bear, yay. 2, skull monkey suicide is real and it can hurt you. Arnaud, inhabited by the R's. R's observe other planets and civilizations, hoping one day to apply all that they have learned to their own civilization. This is not likely, however, since they find comfort in research and are terrified of application. R's are extremely advanced in the arts of the mind. just like academia, which they use to read other beings' minds. Every other generation in the R's lifeline produces an Omega R. Omega R's have such superior mind control that they can use their minds to form physical doorways between worlds. This has been outlawed by Arvin, and only because Katar brought this to his attention. But the Omega R's were not stopped until after they had moved a few Ynts, skull monkeys, and even R's to other planets. Ba'ak. Inhabited by half skull monkeys who are half blue Yint, called blue Yint skull monkeys. These beings look just like white Ints, since the mating of skull monkeys with a blue Int causes a loss of pigmentation in the offspring, resulting in a blue Yint that appears to be white. There is no other visual effect on the offspring from the skull monkeys, though their behavior is more like that of a skull monkey than a community-building blue Yint. Gurley, inhabited by proto-skull monkeys, these pitiful beings have to bury themselves up to their necks every night in the rich Gurley soil to keep from dying of dehydration. They can only eat ha bread, which can only be made by grinding up the largest wicks and adding them to ha batter before it rises. Arvin corrected all of these limitations in the final design of skull monkeys. Gurley has a monthly orbit that floats too close to wicks that the proto-skull monkeys can harvest the plumpest wicks for their hall bread. Due to the proto-skull monkeys is tied to the soil of Gurley, every evening colonizing wicks with proto-skull monkeys is not possible. Wicks. Inhabited by wicks. Wicks are fat, furry, and yellowish in color. Wicks reproduce asexually and often, which would create an overcrowding problem if they were not harvested each month by the proto-skull monkeys. Habsburg, inhabited by one R and one skull monkey who became best friends. The R's name is Hostan. And the skull monkey's name is Mazamosat. Their first year on Habsburg was one confused motions. Because of the myth of the 7 planets fighting amongst each other, Mazamoast and Arhoistan feared each other, but they were lonely and longed for companionship. Also, Arhoistan, behaving in perfect fashion, wanted to study Mazamoast and all of his habits. He spent a lot of time following the skull monkey's tracks to see where he went, examining his feces to see what he ate, and climbing up trees to see where he lived. They found that helping each other was their only chance at happiness and survival. While they were extremely productive during the first 100 years of friendship, they now just sit in front of their houses swapping grossly exaggerated stories of their first year together. Yanko, inhabited by the followers of Mikey, was said to live on Habsburg, though in reality he did not exist at all by any known records. Yankites, beings of Yanko, find pleasure in making intricate artworks for Mikey. Perhaps the greatest works of art known to Qatar are made in Yanko. It is for this reason that no one has the heart to tell the Yankites that Mikey does not exist. I think this is the top 1 Neverhood stream I've ever witnessed on this platform. I appreciate that. That feels great. Thank you for that. Thank you very much for that compliment. I'm taking that. Thank you. The other 6 worlds that Arvin made. Plasno is an enormous cloud of beings, each too small to be seen by the naked eye. R's have projected their minds there. Alphatic is the world of the Argos. Each successive generation is born bigger than the previous. As the Argos of each generation get into their senior years, you hear them making statements like, "These punks think they're so big," or, "When I was your age, we had to stand on a chair to get the fondue pot down from the top kitchen cabinet." The houses of their ancestors are not usable. For the newer generations, they could just not fit through the front doors. Alpha Famalpa is a world where the adults are ruled by their children. The children send their parents on time-consuming, frivolous tasks that keep the parents from doing anything but what the children desire. One might think that a society like this would collapse in anarchy, but to satisfy each whim of their children, the Alparines, or parents, constantly develop new technologies. For instance, when a child looking up at the evening sky said, "I want to see what that white dot is up there," and threw a fit, his Alparines worked night and day till they invented a telescope. When other children saw it, they all wanted one, so a telescope factory was built. In similar ways, advances are made throughout Alpha Famalpa. Alpha Famalpa families have from 1 to 3 children, rarely more. One child being childish may say, "Yes!" when she is asked if she wants a baby brother or sister, she does not have the ability to realize that she will have to share command of the Alperenzi with her siblings, since the Alperens must be obedient to all their children. That child will not be fooled again if she is asked a second time after the birth of her sibling. Later, when the new baby is old enough to answer the Alperines, may be able to ask him while the older sister is not around, and if she has not already warned the boy of the danger of a third sibling, if he wants a baby brother. If a third child is born into the family, the older two will rarely ever let the Alperins out of their sight. This prevents the Alperins from getting the chance to ask the youngest if he or she wants a baby sister or brother. As a favor to Homan, Arvin made the world Flimby for the white Ynts. Most of the white Ynts were taken by Arvin so the blue Ynts could live in peace once again. The white Ynts depended on the hard-working, resourceful blue Ynts for survival. Since the white Ynts are shiftless, no good bums, to survive being in a world with no blue Ynts, the smarter white Ynts, called Rogling, conned the not-so-smart white Ynts, called Habling, into converting into blue Ynts. Here are some tales of the Rogling conning the Hablings into blue Ynts. One night, Papto, tired of wandering in the woods of Flimby, saw the light from a window of a tree cutter's cottage. Papto did not own his own cottage because he was too lazy to build one. He thought to go to the cottage to see the Ynts inside would let him stay, so he went to the door and knocked. The tree cutter's wife opened the door and said, "Shoo! I don't let anyone in while my husband's not in the house. Go away already!" And she slammed the door in his face. Papto was hungry too, and he had smelled the dinner cooking in the cottage while the door was open. He looked around for something to eat and saw a discarded Glufterburger box on the roof of the cottage. He hoped there might be a I think that's an F. I think the G's silent like a gnome. Flutoburger still in the box, but if not, even licking the Flutoburger sauce from the bottom of the box would be delicious. After quietly making his way onto the roof, Papto found a hole through which he could spy on the wife of the tree cutter. Obviously, the tree cutter was too lazy to fix the hole. When he peeked through the hole, Papto saw a beautiful table set out with savory junk roast, clopped fish, and wine. The tree cutter's wife and the county tree censor were seated at the table ready to dine. Now Papto heard the tree cutter lumbering home just then, and so did Mrs. Tree Cutter. The tree cutter was a nice guy, as you would want to meet, but his one quirk was that the mere sight of a county tree censor put him into a fit of rage. Oh, a fit of rage. And that was why the censor was paying a neighborly visit to the wife, because he knew that the tree cutter was out, and a good woman would therefore fix up the best victuals she had. As Papto watched through the hole, she threw everything on the table into the cupboards, and drawers, and hid in the censor in a truck she used as a coffee table. "What are you doing on my roofs?" the tree cutter asked Papto. "You better come in and eat dinner with me and stay in the spare room." Papto brought the glitter box in with him, but kept it out of sight. The wife acted very... Sorry, I was getting myself a little bit more water here. Let me get a little drinky drink here. Woo! Glad to see them both, and set the table and gave them each a big bowl of tor wheat, a gray, tasteless paste. Papto's mouth watered thinking about the junk roast, clute fish, and the other delicacies he had seen. He brought his Glutoburger box up to his ear and opened and closed it a few times. What have you got there?" asked the tree cutter. And found all the wonderful food with which his wife is hidden. Wait, hold on. Did I miss his line? Gray, tasteless pork. Oh, we can't scroll faster. I think I missed the line. We did. "Oh, that's my gluto spirit guide," answered Papto. "He says don't eat that tor wheat. Eat the junk roast, clute fish, and the other things he had the gluto spirit hiding in the cupboard just now." "Super!" exclaimed the tree cutter, who jumped up and found all the wonderful food with which his wife had hidden there, but which he thought the gluto spirit had brought forth. The wife of the tree cutter dared not to say a word, but put all the food on the table. Now Papto put his box up to his ear again and opened and closed it. "What's he says now?" asked the tree cutter. "He says, don't forget the wine behind you in that drawer." So Papto and the tree cutter enjoyed the wine also. The tree cutter wanted to see the gluto spirit this guide used to provide these wonderful things. Can the god conjure the gluta spirit here for us to see? Asked the tree cutter. I wouldn't be troubled about looking at him now that we finished off that wine. I'm kind of loopy. But of course, said Papto. This guy does whatever I tell it to do, don't yous? Here he nodded at the Flutoburger box in his hand. He says yes, but the Fluto spirit is very ugly. He might puke if we were seen to look upon it so soon after eating. So who's afraid of a little barf? What will he look like? Well, you see, he'll look. During this stream, I drank 2 gallons of whole milk and have been working with clay. Yes, clay, not clay. A new section for Mystery Skull. Just like a county tree sensor. Gah, that is ugly, I must tell you. I go into fits of rage when I see a county tree sensor, but I'll be okay knowing that it's really a Fluto spirit. So Papto opened the box and whispered into his ear. Then he put it up to his ear. Very well, said Papto. He's in the trunk you use as a coffee table. We may go look at it now, but don't let it out of the trunk. Help me hold the lid, said the lumberjack, and they all went over to the trunk where the wife had hidden the county tree sensor. They opened the lid and peeked in, then the tree cutter slammed the lid closed. Wow, he is ugly. Yuck. After that, they agreed they needed another drink. They opened another drawer and found another bottle of wine. Much later, the tree cutter said, You must sell me the Fluto spirit guide in the box. Ask as much as you want. I'll pay anything. No, I could never do that, said Papto. Just imagine what I can use him for. Oh, I do so want that Fluto spirit guide so much. Oh, please, 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 please. Oh, please, please. Oh, please, 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 please. Oh, please. Oh, please. Oh, please, 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 please. Please, please. Oh, please, please. Oh, please, please. Cried the tree cutter, and he kept begging. Well, said Papto at last, if you promise that you and your wife will pretend to be blue Ynts for the next 3 years for me, then I'll give you the Fluto burger box. It's a deal, said the tree cutter, but you must take that trunk with that Fluto spirit that looks like a county tree sensor. Fluto spirit guide, so much. Oh, please. Wait. Yeah, no, Yeah, okay, it's because we were, okay, so we're on this one. Oh, wait with you, it gives me the creeps. When Papto left in the morning, he took the trunk on his way, and the other side of the woods was a very deep river. The water rushed by under the bridge, and he was crossing, and the river thundered in the quiet of the forest. Whew, said Papto. I'm tired. This trunk feels like it's full of my brother's weights. I think I may as well throw it in the river, and if it floats home to me, great. If not, no big deal. Then he lifted up one end of the trunk just a little. No, cried the censor from within the trunk. Let me out first. Ah! Screamed Papto, pretending to be frightened. The Fluto spirit's still in there. I'd better throw him in fast so we'll drown. No, 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 exclaimed the censor. I'll be a blue Ynts for you for 3 years if you let me out. I could do that, said Papto, and for the next 3 years he did not lift a finger. Not much is known about Albedo, except that it is a twin of Flimby, and that it lies on the far side of a huge gulf of yellow. Day 15! Give it up for day 15! Plasma. Space currents momentarily blow the yellow plasma away, revealing Albedo to the patient observer. Sump is a world consisting of a group of hollow planets that exist within each other, including Outer June, inhabited by Wicks, about 1,000,000 times as many Wicks itself, because there are no proto-skull monkeys to harvest them every month. About 1/2 of the population is crushed to death by their collective weight. Meso-Aberun, inhabited by Abers. Abers suspect that there is a world above their Outer June floor sky because of the occasional Wick's carcass oozing through a crack or hole, but this is an unimproved theory to them. Some Abers have drilled through their way to the Meso-Aberum to find inner Aberum. These travelers, however, never return to the surface to tell what they found. This has prevented most Abers from attempting the journey, but a few hundred have. Abers fall into 3 castes. The first is intellectual, inquisitive caste called the Frankites. The second is the warring Abers called the Dazites, and the third is the religious caste called the The Frankites spend their time in pursuit of knowledge about the other worlds of Sump, Outer June, and Inder Aberum. The Frankites are not respected by either the Dazites or the Is. The Is accuse the Frankites of messing with their religious mythologies. The Dazites think the Frankites are a bunch of sissies. The Frankites developed the theory of a world above their Outer June floor sky because of the occasional Wick's carcass oozing down through the crack or hole. The Abers have no way of reaching the floor sky, but a drop or two of the disgusting rotting flesh of the Wicks from the Outer June sometimes trickles down. The Frankites have developed a science out of the study of stuff that falls from the sky. They have formed theories of what the world above must be like. Theories of a world within theirs are called Crankule's inner aberrum conjecture, after the Frankite named Crankules, who is said to be the first aber to say, "I wonder if there's a world within our worlds." The Frankites have led expeditions into caves, crevices, and holes in the ground. Most expeditions run into dead ends. The ones that do not have never come back to report what they found. They just say this just confirms that they have known all along. That inner aberrum houses a door to the other side. Although a few Frankites say there are no doors, most agree that there may be something like a door. Meant for a similar message of the... Oh, that makes... Yep. The Abrahamic faiths are fighting again. The Dazites consider the Frankites' research into doors their only useful function in society. The Ez spend their time in pursuit of the knowledge of mythologies. Some Ez follow Father, some Ez follow Keter, some follow Arvin. Some follow Father and Ketar, some follow Ketar and Arvin, and some follow Father and Arvin. Some Ez follow all three together, Father, Ketar, and Arvin. Most Dazites want nothing to do with a door to the other side. They would be very interested, though, if someone found a door to another world that they could conquer. Aberwabble is the notable high priest of the Ez. Kapangdaz, chief warrior of the Dazites, is plotting to assassinate him due to Aberwee's doctrine of peace, which threatens the Dazites' warrior lifestyle. Inner Aberrum, which is said to house a door to the other side, all of the Aber cultures have mythology regarding the door and a special name that identifies that mythology. Here are some of the more popular mythologies. Lipokarathurs, the door is all around us. This is the mythology of the door amongst a small group of Frankites called Ricks. They believe that the door is just a natural consequence of the evolution of all living things. They are fond of going out to the Ubindi forests and hugging the Ubindi trees. Ricks desire to become one with nature, then they believe they will be able to see the way to the door. Until you become one with nature, they say you cannot hope to see as nature sees, and according to the Ricks, nature sees all. Winthrop Ballyhoo, who we have already gone through the door, this is one of the many mythologies found amongst groups within the Ease. The groups within the Ease call them Marfees, believe wholeheartedly that there is a door, but they also believe all have passed through the door in one instant sometime in the past. The Mayfees say that since we are all on the other side of the door, there is no need to look for it. Shempokarlism? Each of us has a door within himself or herself. This is also a mythology from a group within the East called the Shemalaparanites, which has said that Shemokarlism is found the door, but did not go through it. Instead, this is Buddhism, by the way. This is just Buddhism. This is Buddhism, Tao, like with a little bit of Tao, but this is straight. If you find the door and you go through it, you're a Buddha. If you don't, then you're a Bodhisattva. It's fine. This is that. This is exactly that. Instead, he ground the door to a fine dust and put the dust into the drinking water of Mesoaberum. Since that day, the first time an Aber takes a drink of water, they are said to have a door to the other side with it. Never mind, that's a baptism. Never mind, ignore me. I read too deep. I went too deep. Never mind. The Semalakarar hold a water drinking rite for their babies. It's a baptism. The Clabrahamic faiths are having a conflict again. Rimbeck, which we can find the door only when we have tallied up enough good deeds. Strangely enough, this is not another mythology from amongst the Ease. Instead, it comes from the Frankites. Those are the Frankites that believe this myth are pseudoscientific and perpetuate the myth started hundreds of years ago by Jabariah. Jabariah was insane, but he was able to string together sentences full of scientific and theological sounding ideas. Those who did not know better and did not want to take the time to research Jabariah claims would say, "Hear, hear!" Taekwon Leap is not a path to a door, but a road that leads forever towards the horizon. That's good. That's good. I like that. I just looked at my drink and I was like, I am out of water. When he came to their street corner to speak, Jabariah, although enrolled in the Frankite schools, attended classes only occasionally. He spent most of his time digging for imaginary buried treasure or counterfeiting money. With the latter, he would pay classmates to do his homework for him. It was on that he was able to be the last of the treasure hunts that Jabariah said he found the scroll of Rimbeck. Jabarup said that the Scroll of Rimbeck explained that if one does enough good deeds, one will be given a pair of X-ray glasses with which the door can be found. Jabberif said that the good followers of Rimbeck who have disappeared are also only proof one needs to believe the authenticity of the scrolls, which, by the way, no one has ever seen. The fact that they disappeared, Jabberif writes, shows that they got their glasses and went straight to the door. No one has yet found who can name a missing follower of Rimbeck. Pyro Shkonkomo, life stinks, and then you fall through the door. Maybe this mythology has a small support amongst all three castes of Aber. Clarisham, a very good being, made the door long ago and only told one good Aber how to find it. Before he found it, though, he told one other good Aber, and thus the knowledge of the doors has been passed down through the generations. It is said that somehow knowledge of the door's existence became public. Now anyone can find the door if one goes about the right way. To do so, one must attach oneself to a good and righteous person to get taken through the door when the righteous person goes through. This mythology also has a small support amongst all three castes of Aber. They are called Klarshkum by other Abers. The key here is it is believed to be a staple yourself to a righteous Aber so that when he does find the door and go through, you will go with him. The myth states that the Aber named Clabbers, who lived next door to Tugaberg, thought Tugaberg knew how to find the door. Tugaberg was a very nice guy, but Clabbers thought he was the nicest guy there ever was. Clabbers figured that if anybody had a chance to find the door, it would be Toggerberg. So Clabbers found a very powerful stapler and with it attached himself to Toggerberg. It is said that when Toggerberg found the door and went through, Clabbers went through too. Therefore, Abers who believe this myth are always looking for someone... Oh... Hold on. Found the door and went through. Clabberers went through too. Therefore, Abers who believes this myth are always looking for someone who is considered righteous to whom they can staple themselves. If a Klarshkum is ever seen trying to staple himself to another Aber by other Klarskums, they will also try to attach themselves. Usually, friends will help get a Klarshkum off the nice Aber, but if an Aber is tackled by several Klarskum, the Dazite police are summoned to remove them. Burn Tui, Arvin made the door and immediately declared that none shall pass through it upon penalty of death. He only told anyone about it to taunt them with its inaccessibility. And then Flimperty, the door was brought to Inner Aberum. Many we clicked too long. Which branch of the Claberhamic faith do you follow is a really good proc? That's how everybody who joins for the next week will be spoken to. There are many legends of Merlopax. He is a folk hero among the lazy Abers who do not want to be involved in any of the castes. In this tale, Merlopax left Meso-Aberum and stole the door to the other side and brought it back to Meso-Aberum only to lose it to Merlopaxus, the con man. Apollo Pinsmar, the door is a gift from Father. There is nothing anyone can do to find the gift of the door. Father himself must show it to you, and then you must decide if you are going to go through the door. Juant Robeth, the doorway is all that is real, and all of Aberum is but a dream. Tinglesplade, the doorway was built by a giant turtle. Or Roar Owl, only 3,667 Abers are allowed through the door. Yeah? Alright, get me my little music tape. Look outside. Wow. When you get to the start hall, please save. I see the game control F5 using Scum VMM. Thank you, because I'm going to be honest with you. I didn't look up how to save the game before I started. So the hero of the stream goes to Drawn and One. Now to walk back. The Church of Latter-day Clays. Oh, that's good. Now we get to hear the most sound this game has made continuously in approximately 2 hours and 58 minutes. GG, GG, good game. Handshake, handshake. That was fun. Oh, let's just say there's one place you can die, but it's clearly marked. Okay, I shut up now. Now we start the game playing the puzzles. You got to see your picture. I made a comment about it when we walked past it. I said, this is the picture that that's Jamie Shannon's favorite. I'm gonna treasure the VOD after this one is done. Oh. I'm gonna pull it down. We're gonna put it all up on YouTube as one video, 3 hours long. The telling of the Neverhood religion. Thank you for your time. I can't wait till we get to see Willie again. Keep on walking, Clayman. Clayman, we got some walking to do. Oh, it's kind of a long walk, isn't it? Now we read it all again, backwards. We did get a new disc. That was worth it. That was fun. That was fun. I definitely feel very bamboozled because after I got through the first wall, I was like, oh, it keeps going. This will be fun. And then it kept going and going and it didn't stop. It never stopped. It just kept going. But it was good, right? It's not that it was boring or dull at any point. It was very stimulating the whole time. There's so much. You won't do it. You're right. I won't. Not right now. Is this what they meant by going on an adventure that was take all day and had lots of walking? Honestly, that was me at the UFO museum though, in famous place in New Mexico that's known for aliens. Why can I not think of the name right now? Anyway, UFO museum there. I read everything. I took pictures of everything. It was great. Roswell, thank you. I was like, Rose something? That's not right. I'm gonna shut up before I sound too dumb. So your Trash Game of the Year nonsense is endless dialogue between Gilman and Mademoiselle. The Neverhood lays it all out for you to read. Thank God. This was great. I never read the preamble either. Can I go through this door now? I am Kato. Read on my words and be my friend. Father commands me to record the truth of history that readers will learn. Therefore, I give each of my 7 sons one of these self-engraving history recording clay walls. This wall automatically records the activity in this world and in any other world containing one of the other walls. Behold, anyone who tampers with the records shall be... Oh, okay. I did read this one. I didn't read the first one. The first one makes it a lot more